Hey guys, tonight we're going to try something a little different. We aren't just going to talk about history, we're going to drop you right into it. And your new identity, an Ottoman prince. Sounds good. Ride the silks, the sherbet, the sprawling palaces. Well, let's just say that job security isn't great. And the family dynamics make holiday dinners look like a peaceful negotiation. You might not survive the first week. But hey, that's what I'm here for. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where our little history community is spread out across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world, for now, is a symphony of muted, luxurious sounds. The gentle splash of a fountain in a hidden courtyard. The soft rustle of silk as a servant passes. The distant, melodic call to prayer echoing over the rooftops of Istanbul. You're a Said, a prince of the House of Osman, and your home is the Topkapi Palace. A city within a city, the heart of a sprawling empire. But to you, it's just home. You wake not to an alarm, but to the morning light filtering through intricate wooden screens, casting shifting patterns across the rich carpets on the floor. Your bed is a nest of soft linens and embroidered cushions, and the air smells faintly of rosewater and sandalwood. Your days are a carefully curated routine. You are dressed by attendants in a small, soft kaftan of fine wool or silk, its buttons sometimes made of tiny pearls. You don't tie your own shoes, you don't even fetch your own glass of water. Your life is a seamless service, designed to remind you, from your first waking moment, that you are special. Your education is the centerpiece of your existence. Your personal tutor, your Lola, is a man of immense learning and patience. With him, you trace the elegant, flowing lines of Arabic calligraphy, memorize verses from the Quran, and study the epic poems of Persian masters. You learn mathematics, geography, and the complex history of your own dynasty. It's a curriculum designed to build a ruler, a statesman, a warrior. In the afternoons, you practice archery in the palace gardens, where the targets are set up against the ancient Byzantine walls. Your bow is small, made for your hands, but it's a real weapon. You practice horsemanship on Arabian steeds so well trained they seem to read your thoughts. You are surrounded by other boys, the sons of viziers or elite janissaries. But they are not your friends in the way you might understand it. They are your companions, your competition, and your audience, all at once. There's a distance, a formality that never quite dissolves, even in play. One of the stranger parts of your life is the constant presence of the silent figures who manage your world, the palace eunuchs. These men are your guardians, your chaperones, and your servants. They are shadows that glide along the marble corridors, their faces unreadable. You learn early on that they are repositories of secrets, their silence a professional virtue, a particularly interesting, and often overlooked, aspect of palace life was the division of their duties. The chief black eunuch, the Kizil was one of the most powerful men in the empire, controlling the imperial harem, while the white eunuchs served the princes and officials in other parts of the palace. To you, they are just part of the scenery, like the stunning blues neck tiles that adorn the walls, beautiful and cold. For now, your father is sultan. His power is absolute. A fact you understand in the way a child understands the sun is hot. It's a fundamental truth of your universe. You see him during formal occasions, a remote and godlike figure on a gilded throne, or in brief, surprisingly tender moments in the private gardens. He might place a hand on your head, his touch heavy with the weight of empire, and you feel a surge of pride and love. You see your brothers, too, some older, some younger. You play together, you study together, and you are taught to love one another, But sometimes, you catch a look in your mother's eyes as she watches you, all a flicker of something you don't have a name for yet. A mixture of fierce love and a deep, gut-wrenching fear. And here's a point that historians still debate: as a child prince in this golden world, did you have any inkling of the brutal reality of the succession? Some scholars argue that the princes were deliberately shielded from this truth, kept in a state of innocent ignorance for as long as possible. Others contend that the fear was a palpable thing in the harem, a constant, unspoken tension that even a child would absorb. Was it in the way the servants would fall silent when you and your brother entered a room together, or in the way your tutor would stress the importance of obedience to the sultan, to the reigning sultan above all else? You don't know. For now, you are just a boy who believes his biggest problem is mastering a line of poetry. As you fall asleep to the sound of the fountains, wrapped in silks, you feel utterly safe. You have no idea that your name, your very existence, is a potential death sentence. That feeling of safety is a fragile, beautiful thing, like a soap bubble, and it's about to pop. The change doesn't come with a crash, but with a quiet lesson on a rainy afternoon. The air is cool, and the scent of wet earth from the gardens fills your study. You'll be with your Lola, your tutor, tracing the genealogy of your own family. It's a complex tapestry of names, dates, and battles. You are studying the period after your ancestor, Be'ez was defeated and captured, and his sons tore the empire apart in a bloody civil war that lasted for over a decade. The story is gripping, full of ambition and tragedy. You, in your youthful innocence, ask the question that seals your childhood's fate. Lola, you say, looking up from the intricate family tree, why did they fight each other? Weren't they brothers? Your tutor, a man who has patiently explained the complexities of siege warfare and the nuances of Persian poetry, suddenly stiffens. It's a minuscule change, a slight tightening of the muscles around his jaw, but you notice it. He places his reed pen down very, very carefully. The silence in the room suddenly feels heavy, pressing in on you. He clears his throat. For the good of the state, my prince, he says, his voice losing its usual warmth. The world order a fractured empire cannot stand. There can only be one sun in the sky. He explains that those civil wars nearly destroyed the Ottoman state, leaving it vulnerable to enemies. It was a less unlearned in blood. Then he guides your finger down the family tree to another name, a name that echoes through the palace with a reverence bordering on fear. Mehmed I, the conqueror, the man who took Constantinople. Your ancestor, the great fattest Sultan Mehmed. Your tutor continues, his voice barely a whisper. Understood this danger. He understood that the love between brothers, however strong, could not be trusted to outweigh the allure of the throne. He then quotes the infamous lines from the conqueror's log ode, the canon name for the good of the state. Whichever of my sons is granted the sultanate by Allah, it is proper for him to eliminate his brothers. He uses a soft, cynical word, a word that hangs in the air like poison gas. Eliminate. It's a word for pests, for problems on a ledger, not for family. You don't fully grasp it. Eliminate them, you mean? Send them away. Your voice is small. Your tutor looks at you, and for the first time, you see not a teacher, but a man burdened by a terrible knowledge he is forced to impart. He shakes his head slowly. No, my prince. And then the bubble pops. The so monstrous meaning crashes into you. The games in the garden with your brothers, the shared jokes, the quiet camaraderie, it all occurred less in your memory. You look at your own hands, then you think of your brother's face. This is the central, brutal fact of your existence, the law of fratricide. It wasn't born of sadism, but of a cold, pragmatic political calculation. The stability of a world-spanning empire was deemed more important than the lives of a few princes. It was a terrible solution to a terrible problem, and it became tradition. When a new sultan ascended the throne, one of his first acts was often to send official executioners to his brother's quarters. And here is a small, chilling detail you would later learn. Ottoman tradition held that the blood of the divinely appointed royalty was sacred and could not be spilled. So execution was a quiet, godless, almost ritualistic affair. The chosen method was strangulation with a silk bowstring, the very material that symbolized your wealth and status. The silk of your clothes, your bed sheets, your wall hangings could become the instrument of your death. It was a clean, silent, and deeply personal act of violence, carried out not by a common soldier, but often by high-ranking deaf mutes from the palace, ensuring no pleas or secrets would ever be heard or repeated. Now you look around your opulent room. The silk cushions suddenly seem sinister. The quiet, gliding servants seem like potential assassins. And your brothers are now your rivals in a game you never agreed to play. A game where the prize is your life. That look you saw in your mother's eyes, you understand it now. It was the terror of a woman who knew she might have to watch one of her sons order the death of her others. Historians still argue about the psychological impact of this law on the princes as they grew up. Today, as some sources suggest, develop a grim, fatalistic acceptance of their potential fate, viewing it as a known risk of their station. A sort of terrible occupational hazard, or did they, as others argue, live in a state of constant, gnawing paranoia, where every friendly gesture from a brother was suspect and every political shift in the palace was a potential death? The truth is likely a mixture of both, varying from prince to prince. But for you, right now, in this quiet room with the rain tapping on the window, it's just pure, cold fear. The lesson is over. Your tutor says nothing more on the subject, moving on to a dry topic about tax farming revenues, but you don't hear a word. His voice is a meaningless drone. The world you woke up in this morning is gone forever. In its place is a gilded arena, and the moment your father, the Sultan, draws his last breath, the games will begin. The palace fountains are still splashing outside, but you no longer hear a melody. You hear the slow, steady ticking of a clock. The clock ticks faster than you could ever imagine. It's years later, but it feels like only a few heartbeats have passed since that rainy afternoon. You are a young man now, no longer a boy. You've grown into your strength and your titles. Your understanding of the world deeper, your awareness sharper, and the thing you have been dreading has finally happened. Your father, the Sultan, the center of your universe, is dead. The news doesn't arrive in a dramatic announcement. There's no herald blowing a trumpet. Instead, it's a change in the atmosphere of the palace, as sudden and as total as a drop in air pressure before a storm. The usual hum of activity ceases. Servants who used to glide now scurry, their eyes cast down, avoiding all contact. The guards at your door are doubled, their faces impassive stone. The silence that descends is not peaceful, it is electric with unspoken urgency. You are confined to your chambers, and nobody tells you anything, which, in the Topkapi Palace, tells you everything. Your older brother is now Sultan. It's a fact that solidifies in your mind long before it's officially declared. He was the eldest, the one who had been given a provincial governorship to learn the arts of rule, a privilege you and your younger brothers were denied. He was always the heir apparent, the sun around which all the princely planets orbited. Now, he is the only sun, and the sun casts very dark shadows. Your life is now measured in breaths. Each one could be your last. You sit in your room, the same room where you learned to read and practice calligraphy. And you wait. The brocaded walls feel like they're closing in. The rich carpets seem to muffle the sound of approaching footsteps, making every creak of the floorboards outside a potential signal of your doom. Your mind races. You think of the deaf-mute executioners, the silk bowstring. Will it hurt? Will you be brave? You try to recall the lines of poetry. You learn it about courage and fate, but the words turn to ash in your mouth. Your mother comes to you. Her face is a mask of grief, but beneath it is a frantic, steely resolve. She doesn't cry. Crying is a luxury for a time like this. She speaks in low, urgent tones, her words tumbling over one another. She tells you to be silent, to be obedient, to show no ambition, to make yourself as small and unthreatening as a mouse. Do not speak unless you are spoken to. Do not look him in the eye. Swear your fealty. Pray that he remembers the days you played together in the gardens. Her advice is a litany of submission, a desperate gamble of brother's mercy. The wait ends. A summons arrives. You are to present yourself to the new sultan in the hall of audience. Walking through the palace corridors is a surreal experience. The entire court is assembled. A sea of faces viziers, generals, religious scholars, all dressed in their finest ceremonial robes. As you walk, you feel their eyes on you. Are they looking with pity, with cold calculation? Are they already imagining the empire without you in it? You feel less like a prince and more like a ghost, haunting the last few moments of your own life. You see your younger brothers, pale and terrified, being led in as well. You exchange a look not of rivalry, not anymore, but of shared, bottomless dread. You are all lambs being led to the same altar. The moment you enter the hall, you see him, your brother. He sits on the throne, the same one your father occupied, but he looks different. The weight of the world has already settled on his shoulders, erasing the young man you knew and replacing him with something harder. He is the sultan now. He is the state. This is the terrifying crucible of Ottoman power. The transition had to be swift and absolute. Any hesitation, any sign of a rival claimant, could spark unnecessary rebellion or encourage a foreign enemy. So the consolidation of power was brutal and immediate. A newly ascended sultan had to project an aura of unassailable authority from his very first breath as ruler. Any perceived weakness, like familial sentimentality, could be fatal. Historians often point to this moment, the first few hours of a new reign, as the most dangerous in the empire's political cycle. You perform the prescribed ritual. You approach the throne, bow low, and kiss the hem of his robe, the ultimate act of submission. You murmur the words of loyalty, the oath of fealty, your voice sounding strange and distant in your own ears. You keep your eyes fixed on the floor, just as your mother instructed. You can feel his gaze on the top of your head, heavy and unreadable. The silence in the hall is so profound you can hear the blood pounding in your ears. This is it, the moment of decision. He could give a signal, a slight nod of his head, and the guards would seize you. But the signal doesn't come. He speaks your name, and his voice is strained. He tells you to rise. He tells all of you and your younger brothers that you will be spared. A collective, inaudible sigh seems to ripple through the court, but the relief that floods through you is immediately chilled by what he says next. You will not be executed, but you will not be free. Either, you will be escorted to a special, secluded part of the palace, a place of comfort and security, he calls it, a place where you will be safe from the temptations of ambition. A place called the Kafes, the cage. A strange, and perhaps apocryphal, story from this period tells of a young prince in your situation who, upon hearing the sentence, actually wept with gratitude. He wasn't being sentenced to a prison, he was being granted his life. At that moment, a gilded cage looked infinitely better than a silk bowstring. You don't weep. You just feel a profound, hollow emptiness. You have survived. But you have a sinking feeling that the man who walked into this hall will not be the same man who enters that cage. The execution has been stayed, but a different, slower kind of death is about to begin. The sentence is pronounced not as a punishment, but as an act of mercy. A progressive reform. Even, you hear the whispers among the court officials as you are led away. Sultan Ahmed's wisdom. They murmur. He breaks with the bloody tradition. An enlightened age is upon us. They see it as a humane solution, a way to avoid the stain of fratricide that has haunted the dynasty for generations. Your brother, the new sultan, is being praised for his compassion. But as you walk down the long, marbled corridor, leaving the hall of audience and the world of the living behind, it doesn't feel like mercy. It feels like a carefully wrapped death sentence with a much longer delivery time. The idea of the Kafes wasn't born overnight. It was the culmination of a gradual shift in dynastic practice. For a long time, the debate had raged within the palace walls: was the risk of civil war greater than the moral sin of brother killing? The practice of fratricide, while effective, was brutal and deeply unpopular with the religious establishment and the general populace. It created an image of the royal family as a nest of vipers. The shift began when princes stopped being sent to govern provinces. This was a crucial change. A prince with a province had an army, a power base, and administrative experience. He was a genuine threat. A prince raised entirely within the palace walls was not. He had no loyal troops, no treasury, no experience. He was a theoretical danger, not a practical one. And so, the Kafes was born under Sultan Omadai in the early 17th century. He had been a prince who lived in terror of his own execution and, upon ascending the throne, refused to kill his mentally unstable brother, Mustafa. Instead, he had him confined. It was an improvised solution that hardened into an institution. It was seen as the perfect compromise. It neutralized the threat of rival princes without the bloodshed. The state would be secure, and the Sultan's hands would be clean. A win-win, or so the thinking went. You are now a living testament to this new, enlightened policy. Your escort consists of a handful of imperial guards and the stern-faced chief white eunuch. They don't speak to you. They are not your jailers in the common sense. They are your handlers, managing your transition from one state of being to another. You walk through familiar parts of the palace, but now everything looks alien. You pass by a window overlooking the Golden Hall, the waterway glittering with sunlight and dotted with ships. It's a view you've seen 1,000 times, but today, it's like you're looking at a painting of a world you can no longer touch. The sounds of the city, the shouts of merchants, the clanging of hammers, the cry of gulls seem to be fading, as if someone is slowly turning down the volume of reality. You reach a section of the Topkapi Palace you've never been allowed to enter. It's part of the imperial harem, but a separate, self-contained wing. The architecture is just as splendid as the rest of the palace: fine marble, intricate tile work, gilded ceilings, but there's a stillness here, a lack of movement, that is deeply unsettling. It feels preserved, like a museum exhibit that happens to be inhabited. The chief white eunuch produces a large, ornate key. He inserts it into the lock of a heavy, beautifully carved wooden door. The lock turning is the loudest sound you've heard since leaving the throne room. It's a final, metallic groan of protest. He pulls the door open, and you are gestured inside. You hesitate for a fraction of a second. This is a threshold. You know, with a certainty that sinks to the bottom of your soul, that once you cross it, you may never cross back. You take a breath, straighten your back, a final, useless act of princely dignity, and step through. You find yourself in a courtyard. It's beautiful, of course. Everything is beautiful here. There's a small fountain murmuring in the center, a few cypress trees reaching for a patch of sky that seems impossibly small, framed by high walls. Around the courtyard are the entrances to a series of lavishly appointed rooms. This is your new home. It has a name you already know: the Simsa Lik, the place of boxwood trees. A gentle, botanical name for a cage. A truly bizarre fact about the Kafes is the sheer level of luxury it contained. This was no dungeon. The princes were not to be mistreated. They were given everything they could want, materially speaking: the finest food, the most beautiful clothes, books, musical instruments. They were even provided with companions, a hand-picked selection of concubines, specifically chosen because they were barren or past childbearing age, to ensure that no new, rival heirs could be conceived within the cage's walls. The logic was to keep the princes pacified with pleasure, drowning any potential ambition in a sea of sensory indulgence. You see your younger brothers being led into adjoining suites. You won't be entirely alone. But the rules of your confinement will ensure you remain isolated in all the ways that matter. As you stand in the courtyard, taking in the opulent, sun-dappled prison, you hear the sound you've been dreading. Behind you, the heavy door swings shut. The lock turns again, this time from the outside. The sound echoes in the sudden quiet of the courtyard, a note of absolute finality. Historians are still divided on the immediate psychological intent of the Kafes. Was it designed to be a comfortable retirement? A genuine act of mercy that simply had unforeseen tragic consequences, or was it a more cynical form of psychological cruelty? A conscious decision to let a prince slowly rot in isolation. Believing this was a more manageable outcome than creating a martyr through execution, you, standing in the sudden gloom as a cloud passes over the tiny patch of sky, don't care about the intent. You only know the result. The world has been taken from you, and all you have left is this gilded, silent box. The door closes. The sound is not a slam, but a deep, resonant thump that seems to press the air out of the small courtyard. The click of the lock is sharp, definitive. It's the punctuation mark at the end of the sentence that is the rest of your life. For a long moment, you just stand there, listening to the silence that rushes in to fill the void. The murmuring fountain, which sounded so peaceful from a distance, now seems to be mocking you with its mindless, repetitive chatter. You take your first steps not as a prince being escorted, but as an inmate exploring his cell. You run a hand along the wall. It's covered in exquisite isn't tiles, a swirling pattern of cobalt blue and turquoise. They are cool and smooth to the touch. In another life, you would have admired the craftsmanship. Now, you feel the unyielding stone beneath the glaze. These are not decorative walls, they are barriers. You look up. The sky is a small, geometric shape of blue, framed by the high, overhanging roofs. It feels curated, like a window display of freedom. Your new quarters are, by any standard, fit for a king. There is a main receiving room, a bedchamber, a private bathhouse, a hammam, and several smaller adjoining rooms. The furnishings are a testament to the empire's wealth. Silk carpets from Persia, so thick your boots sink into them. A low divan piled high with embroidered cushions. A mother-of-pearl inlaid chest for your clothes. The light filters in through stained glass windows, painting the dust motes dancing in the air in jeweled colors. It's breathtakingly beautiful. And it's the most terrifying place you have ever been. This is the fundamental paradox of the Kafes. It was designed to be a comfortable prison, but the very comfort is a form of torture. There are no iron bars, no chains, no damp stone walls. The cruelty isn't physical, it's existential. The luxury is a constant, nagging reminder of everything you are, and everything you've lost. You are a prince, therefore you must live in splendor. But you are a prisoner, therefore you can never leave. Every beautiful object is a bar in your cage. You wander into the bedchamber. The bed is vast, canopied, and piled with soft furs and linens. You can imagine sinking into it, but you doubt sleep will come easy here. Your eyes are drawn to the windows. They are not barred, but are covered with an incredibly intricate mashrabiyah, a wooden latticework screen. You can see out, but only in fragmented, distorted glimpses. The world outside is sliced into 1,000 tiny pieces. It prevents anyone from seeing in. That more importantly, it prevents you from truly seeing out. It's a perfect metaphor for your new existence. You are adjacent to the world, but not part of it. You are not entirely alone. A retinue of servants has been assigned to you. They enter silently, their feet making no sound on the thick carpets. They are deaf mutes. This was a deliberate choice. It served two purposes. First, it ensured the utmost security. You could not bribe them, conspire with them, or extract information from them. They were living vaults of secrecy. Second, and perhaps more cruelly, it enforced a profound social isolation. You are surrounded by human forms, but you are deprived of the most fundamental human connection: conversation. They attend to your needs with flawless efficiency, bringing food, fresh clothes, hot water for your bath, but their faces are blank, their eyes refusing to meet yours. They are living furniture. A fascinating, and rather sad, detail of life in the Kafes was the hierarchy in lives of these deaf-mute servants. They were often trained from a young age in a special sign language, known only to them and a few high-ranking palace officials, making their communications a closed circuit. They held a strange position of both power and powerlessness. They were slaves, but they were also the guardians of the empire's most dangerous secrets, the princes in the cage. Their loyalty was to the reigning sultan, and their primary job was to watch, to listen with their eyes, and to report everything. You try to speak to one of them, a young man with gentle eyes who is arranging a bowl of fruit on a table. "What is your name?" you ask. Your voice sounds loud and abrasive in the quiet room. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't even acknowledge that you've spoken. He simply finishes his task, gives a slight formal bow, and glides out of the room. The silence he leaves behind is heavier than before. It's the silence of being utterly and completely unheard. Historians still puzzle over the exact day-to-day experience of a prince's first moments in the Kafes. The sources are, by their very nature, silent on the matter. Was there a formal to a list of rules read out, or were they, as seems more likely, simply deposited into this luxurious void and left to figure out the boundaries of their new world on their own? The very act of leaving a prince to discover the gilded edges of his confinement would have been a powerful psychological statement in itself. For you, the exploration ends where it began, back in the central courtyard. You can see the windows of your brother's apartments. You wonder if they are doing the same thing you are pacing, touching the walls, testing the limits of their new reality. Are they, too, feeling the crushing weight of this opulent to you are closer to them physically than you have been in years, yet more isolated than ever before? You are a small constellation of dying stars, trapped in the same patch of artificial sky. The fountain continues its senseless splashing. You sit on its edge, the cold stone seeping through your fine clothes, and you watch the sliver of sky, waiting for it to darken. It's the only change you have to look forward to. The first few days are a blur of disorientation. Your body, accustomed to the rhythms of a palace, a city, and an empire, rebels against the stillness. You wake up expecting the distant sounds of the Janissary barracks or the morning call to prayer rolling over the Bosporus. But all you hear is the fountain. The relentless, maddeningly cheerful splash and gurgle of the fountain. It's the soundtrack to your confinement, a constant reminder of the closed, circular nature of your new world. The silence is the hardest part. It's not the absence of sound, it's the absence of meaningful sound. It's a thick, suffocating blanket, the scrape of a dish, the rustle of a servant's clothing, the creak of a floorboard. These noises are loud, alien, and startling in the deep quiet. You find yourself holding your breath, trying to listen for something, anything, from the world outside. A raised voice, a horse's whinny, a cannon salute. But the walls of the Kafes are thick, designed to insulate and isolate. The world has been muted. You try to speak, just to hear a human voice. You talk to yourself, and first, it's just whispers. You narrate your own actions. Now I am walking to the window. Now I am picking up a pomegranate. It feels foolish, insane, but the sound of your own voice, however thin, is a small anchor in the sea of silence. It proves you are still here. Your deaf-mute servants become objects of intense fascination and frustration. You study them. You try to learn their routines, to find some flicker of personality behind their placid masks. You try to communicate with gestures. You point to a book. I'm reading. They bring you the book. You smile. A genuine, grateful smile. They respond with a blank, impassive stare. There is no connection. It's like trying to befriend a reflection in a pond. They are perfect, impenetrable surfaces. This enforced silence had a well-documented and devastating effect on the psychology of the inmates. Human beings are social creatures, hardwired for communication, To be deprived of it is a form of sensory deprivation, without the feedback, validation, and simple comfort of conversation. The mind begins to turn inward in unhealthy ways. Princes would spend years, sometimes decades, without a single real conversation. Their social skills would atrophy and disappear, replaced by paranoia, anxiety, and a deep-seated distrust of the human face, which they had only ever known as a mask. You soon discover the rules of your confinement are not written down, but are enforced by the very architecture of the place. You can wander freely within your own suite of rooms in the central courtyard. You can even see your brothers. Sometimes, you pass one of them in the courtyard. You nod, he nods back, and that's it. You are forbidden to speak to one another. The guards who patrol the perimeter of the Kafes, always out of sight but always present, would report any such infraction immediately. To conspire, even to comfort one another, is the one crime that would not be tolerated, so you live in a state of enforced parallel solitude, together, but alone. Here's a peculiar and chilling detail about the system. The prohibition on communication wasn't just about preventing plots. It was about preventing the formation of any kind of alliance or emotional bond. The Sultan on the outside knew that if the brothers in the cage ever managed to form a united front, they could become a political symbol, a focus for dissenters. But if they were kept isolated, suspicious, and resentful of each other, each one secretly hoping he might be the one chosen to succeed the Sultan, they would effectively police themselves. The silence was a tool of control, turning potential allies into silent rivals for a prize that might never materialize. You try to establish a routine to fight off the encroaching madness. You wake, you wash, you eat. You spend hours in the small library attached to your suite. The collection is impressive poetry, history, theology. You read the stories of great conquerors, of your own ancestors, and it feels like reading about a different species. Their world of action, decision, and consequence is so alien to yours that it might as well be mythology. One day, desperate for a change, you shout. You stand in the middle of the courtyard, tilt your head back, and yell at the small patch of sky. It's a wordless roar of frustration, a primal scream. It echoes strangely off the tiled walls. For a moment, there's a reaction. You see a face at one of your brother's latticed windows, quickly withdrawn. From an unseen walkway above, a guard leans over for a second, his helmet catching the sun, before disappearing again. Your deaf-mute servants, who are arranging your midday meal, don't even look up. They continue placing a dish of olives on the table as if nothing happened. The sound dies, swallowed by the waiting silence, and you realize the most terrifying thing of all: you can scream, and nobody will answer. Your existence, your rage, your despair, it makes no sound in the world that matters. Historians debate whether this psychological torment was a designed feature or a tragic byproduct of the Kafes system. Were the architects of this policy fully aware they were creating a machine for breaking minds, or did they naively believe that a life of luxury could compensate for a life without freedom, conversation, or hope? The answer is likely lost to time, a secret held within the silent walls of the palace. But for you, the intent is irrelevant. The fountain splashes, the servants glide, and the silence presses in, a physical weight that you will have to carry, day after day, for the rest of your life. It's the sound of your own mind slowly, quietly beginning to unravel. Days bleed into weeks, and weeks into an amorphous stretch of time you stop trying to measure. You begin to intimately know every detail of your prison. You are no longer just an inmate, you are a connoisseur of your own confinement. You know which tile in your hammam has a hairline crack shaped like a falcon. You know the exact pattern of sunlight that creeps across the floor of your bedchamber, a slow, golden sundial marking the passage of another pointless day. You know the individual knots in the wood of the latticed mesh rubber your screens, each one a tiny, distorted lens offering a unique, useless view of a world you cannot join. This place, the Simsarel like he, is a masterpiece of deception. Every surface is designed to soothe the eye while caging the body. The walls are not cold, bare stone, but are covered in vibrant silks and velvets. Their textures rich and warm. The air is perfumed with incense, a constant, pleasant scent of amber and musk that masks the smell of stagnation. The food that arrives on silver trays is a work of art: delicate pastries, roasted meats with jeweled rice, glistening fruits, a feast for a man with no appetite. It's a cage built by artists, not engineers, and that, you realize, is what makes it so effective. A brutal dungeon inspires rebellion, a righteous anger. But this place, this beautiful, gentle, suffocating place, it inspires a quiet, creeping despair. It's hard to rage against a velvet wall. It's impossible to protest when your every material need is met with silent, instantaneous service. The luxury is the anesthetic, dulling the sharp edges of your misery until you can barely remember what it felt like to be truly alive. You spend a lot of time observing your fellow prisoners, the women, the concubines sent to be your companions. They are beautiful, skilled in music and dance, and utterly, terrifyingly empty. They are prisoners just like you. No sentences served in your company. They are chosen for their beauty, but also, as you know, for their infertility. They are flowers meant to decorate your prison, incapable of bearing fruit. This was a critical part of the Kafes system. The reigning sultan wanted no surprise nephews appearing, no new bloodlines starting in the shadows. The women were a pleasure, a distraction, and a dead end, all in one. One of them plays the oud for you in the evenings. She is a gifted musician, her fingers coaxing melodies of heartbreaking sadness from the instrument. But when the music stops, her eyes are vacant. You try to talk to her, to ask her about her home, her past. She answers in polite, rehearsed monosyllables, her gaze drifting over your shoulder. She has been trained to be a companion, not a confidant. Her spirit, you suspect, has been locked away in a cage far more secure than this one. The interactions are a pantomime of intimacy, a hollow echo of human connection that only serves to highlight its absence. Here's a small, strange detail of life in the Kafes pastimes. With nothing but time on their hands, many princes developed intense, often buzzer hobbies. Some became master calligraphers, spending years perfecting a single style of script. Others became obsessed with clockmaking, taking apart and re-smelling complex European timepieces, a poignant hobby for men whose own time had stopped. Some devoted themselves to poetry, writing verse after verse about caged birds and lost love. And some, in the absence of any real power, turned to mastering the intricate politics of their own tiny, artificial court, manipulating their servants and concubines in pathetic imitations of the grand games being played outside their walls. These hobbies were not just ways to pass the time, they were survival mechanisms, desperate attempts to impose order and meaning on a meaningless existence. You too, need something to anchor your mind. You choose history. You devour the books in your library. You read about your ancestor, Selim the Grim, and his conquest of Egypt. You read about Suleiman the Magnificent, and his armies at the gates of Vienna. You trace the maps. You memorize the lineages. You learn the grand strategies. You become an expert on a world of action. This scholar of power. It's a bitter irony you have never been more knowledgeable about how to rule an empire, and never been further from the possibility of doing so. The knowledge is a treasure with no value, a key to a door that will never appear. Historians often wonder about the quality of the libraries within the Kafes. Were the princes given access to a full range of knowledge? Or was their reading material carefully curated? Some evidence suggests their collections were vast and uncensored, containing everything from military history to philosophy. The reigning sultans, it seems, were not afraid of their brothers becoming educated. An educated man might be placated by books. What they feared was a prince with practical experience, charisma, and a loyal following. Knowledge, when trapped within a gilded cage, was considered harmless. It was a theory that would, in time, proved to be catastrophically wrong. Tonight, you sit on the divan, a heavy book open on your lap. The concubine has finished her song. The scent of jasmine hangs in the air. The silence has returned. You look around the room, at the silks, the intricate carvings, the soft lantern light. It is a perfect picture of peace and luxury, a prison cell designed by a poet. But as you stare at the elegant Arabic script on the page, the words begin to blur. You are not reading about history anymore. You are realizing, with a cold dread, that you are becoming a part of it. A footnote in the story of the Ottoman dynasty. The prince who was spared the sword, only to be given a beautiful, suffocating, perfectly crafted cage. The sun becomes your enemy, not the light itself, but what it represents, the relentless, cyclical nature of your imprisonment. Dawn, noon, dusk. Each day is a perfect replica of the one before it, and a perfect blueprint for the one to come. Time loses its linear progression and becomes a stagnant pool. To fight against this, to keep your mind from dissolving into the featureless landscape of your days, you begin to construct a rigid, almost fanatical, daily routine. This is your first line of defense against the madness. You decide that if the world will not impose a structure on you, you will impose one upon yourself. Your schedule is more demanding than any your tutors ever set for you. You wake before the first hint of light, not because you have to, but because it is a decision, an act of will. You perform your morning ablutions and prayers with a focused precision that borders on obsession. Every movement is deliberate, a tiny ritual to prove you are still in control of your own body. Breakfast is not a meal, it is a formal ceremony. You eat at the exact same time, in the exact same spot, regardless of whether you are hungry. After breakfast, from the first ray of sun until it hits the central minaret of a distant mosque or mark you can just barely see through a gap in the rooftops, you dedicate yourself to physical exercise. There is no space for archery or horsemanship. So you pace. You walk the perimeter of the courtyard, again and again, until you have worn a faint path in the stone. 10,000 steps before midday. It's a mindless, repetitive action, but it tires your body and quiets the frantic energy in your mind. Afternoons are for the mind, 3 hours of reading, no exceptions. You don't just read, you study. You take notes on scraps of paper with a reed pen. You memorize long passages of poetry. You attempt to translate Persian texts into Ottoman Turkish. It's a desperate attempt to keep your intellect sharp, a muscle you fear will atrophy from disuse. You assign yourself essays on military tactics and theological debates. You are your own harshest teacher. This creation of elaborate, often bizarre, routines is a common psychological response to prolonged isolation and uncertainty. It's a coping mechanism seen in prisoners, castaways, and anyone trapped in a monotonous and powerless situation. By controlling the small, mundane details of life, a person can create an illusion of control over their larger fate. For the princes in the Kafes, these routines were not just a way to pass the time, they were a mental fortress against the encroaching chaos of a life without purpose. The strangest part of your routine is what you call the hour of observation. Every day, as the afternoon light begins to fade, you sit by your lattice window, the one that gives you the most fragmented view of an inner palace garden. You don't look at the big picture. You focus on one tiny sliver of the outside world. You watch a single rose bush. You learn its life cycle. You see the buds form, swell, and burst into bloom. You watch the petals turn brown and fall. You see a gardener come, prune the dead heads, and tend to the soil. This silent, one-sided relationship with a rose bush becomes one of the most meaningful events of your day. It's a connection, however fragile, to a world that lives and changes. A little-known aspect of the Kafes' design was its careful acoustic planning. While it was built to block out the noise of the city, it was rumored that certain parts of the structure were designed to carry sound from the main palace to the inmates, but not the other way around. Historians debate whether this was intentional, a form of psychological manipulation. Imagine hearing the faint sounds of a festival you cannot attend, or the distant music of a military parade celebrating a victory you had no part in. It would be a constant, subtle reminder of your exclusion, feeding the sense of isolation and irrelevance. You are not sure if this is true, but sometimes you think you can hear things, faint echoes of life. And it is in these moments that your rigid routine is most vulnerable. A distant peal of laughter, a snatch of music, these things can break through your carefully constructed defenses and flood you with a grief so profound it leaves you breathless. The routine is your armor, but it is not impenetrable. As night falls, your day of rigid self-discipline ends. You allow yourself to relax. One of your concubines plays the oud, her sad melodies filling the perfumed air. You eat your evening meal, and then, in the deep quiet of the night, the facade crumbles. The discipline of the day gives way to the fears of the darkness. You lie in your magnificent bed and the thoughts you've held at bay all day come rushing in. How long will this last? A year, 10 years, a lifetime? Will you die in this beautiful room? Will you be forgotten? The fear is a physical thing, a cold weight in your chest. You get up and walk to the window, peering through the latticework. The palace outside is a collection of dark shapes and a few scattered lights. You press your forehead against the cool wood. You have survived another day. You have won another small, meaningless victory against the void. But as you stand there, listening to the silence, you have to wonder in this battle to preserve your sanity. Are you building a fortress or just decorating the walls of your own shrinking mind? Your world has shrunk to the size of your apartments and the small courtyard. But it is not empty. It is populated by silent, moving figures who are the sole arbiters of your physical existence. Your servants, your companions, the deaf-mute attendants and the barren concubines. In the absence of any other social interaction, these people become the central focus of your universe, and your relationship with them is one of the strangest things you will ever experience. At first, you saw them as furniture, as extensions of the palace walls, but as the months wear on, you start to see them as individuals. You give them names in your head. The giver of coffee, a man with a long, sorrowful face, the arranger of cushions, a young woman who moves with the grace of a dancer, the keeper of the door, the stern-faced eunuch who seems to be their leader. These names are your own private fiction, a way to impose a human story onto their silent, professional surfaces. You learn their movements, their habits. You know that the giver of coffee always pauses for a fraction of a second before pouring, as if lost in thought. You know that the arranger of cushions has a tiny, almost invisible scar above her left eyebrow. These details become incredibly important to you. They are proof that these are real people, not automatons. And yet, the wall between you is absolute. They serve you flawlessly. But they do not see you. They look through you. They are trained to be present and absent at the same time. This creates a bizarre form of intimacy. These people see you at your most vulnerable. They dress you. They bathe you. They watch you eat. They stand silently in the room as you try to sleep. They know your moods, your habits, your private moments. They know you better than your own mother ever did. But this intimacy is entirely one-sided. You know nothing of them. They are a constant presence, yet a constant mystery. It's a relationship of profound physical proximity and absolute emotional distance. This dynamic was a deliberate and core feature of the Kafes system. The servants were not just there to serve, they were there to watch. Every prince was under constant, silent surveillance. Everything you did, everything you said, even to yourself, any sign of agitation, despair, or most dangerously ambition, was noted and reported. The silent servants were the eyes and ears of the Sultan. This is a point that historians agree on. The Kafes was as much an intelligence-gathering operation as it was a prison. The Sultan needed to know the state of mind of his potential rivals. Were they succumbing to madness? Were they plotting? The deaf-mute servants were the perfect spies, incapable of being interrogated. Their loyalty absolute. You start to test them, to play little games. You will deliberately misplace an object. just to see how long it takes for one of them to find it and put it back in its proper place. You will feign sleep, watching them through slit-head eyelids as they move about the room. You are desperate for any reaction, any break in their perfect composure. But there is never one. They are incorruptible, unshakable. Their discipline is a work of art, and it is maddening. A particularly strange and little documented aspect of this relationship was the issue of affection. What happened if a prince formed a genuine emotional attachment to one of his attendants or concubine? Sources are scarce, but it is believed that any such bond would be severed immediately and ruthlessly. If a concubine was seen to be gaining too much influence over a prince, or if a servant showed a flicker of personal loyalty, they would simply disappear overnight, replaced by another blank face. The system was designed to prevent any emotional anchor from taking hold. A prince with someone to love or trust was a prince with something to lose, and therefore potentially more dangerous. This breeds a deep, corrosive paranoia. You start to see them not just as servants, but as your gods, your judges. Is the giver of coffee's hand shaking slightly today because he is ill, or because he has put something in your drink? Is the arranger of cushions staring at that wall because the pattern is interesting, or because she is listening to something on the other side? Your mind, starved of real information, starts to invent its own narratives, and they are always dark. Every shadow holds a spy, every silent gesture a hidden meaning. You find yourself in a perverse reversal of roles. You, the prince, are the one who is powerless. They, the slaves, hold your life in their hands. They decide what you eat, when you wash, what you wear. They control your environment completely. And while you could, in theory, lash out at them, you know it would be a futile and foolish act. It would be reported instantly, and it would only confirm your instability. So you are forced into a state of absolute, childlike dependence on people you cannot trust. You are sitting in the courtyard one afternoon. The keeper of the door, the lead eunuch, approaches you. This is unusual. He stops a few feet away and makes a series of complex, elegant gestures with his hands. It's the first time any of them have tried to communicate with you directly. You stare, unconfronted. It's their special sign language, the one you are not meant to understand. He is telling you something. Is it a warning, a piece of news you don't know? He finishes his silent speech, gives a slight bow, and retreats. You sit there for a long time, the memory of his flushing hands burned into your mind. The message is clear, not in its content, but in its delivery. They are reminding you that there is a world of communication happening all around you, a world of secrets and information, and you are not a part of it. You are the subject of the conversation, but you will never be allowed to hear it. They are your companions, your keepers, and your silent, ever watchful chorus. Your senses, deprived of normal stimulation, start to change. They recalibrate. Your hearing, in particular, becomes unnaturally acute. In the profound silence of the Kafes, you begin to hear the secret life of the palace. You learn to interpret the faint, muffled sounds that filter through the thick walls and high ceilings. You become a connoisseur of whispers. At first, it's just a meaningless hum, the distant, ambient noise of a large, functioning household. But slowly, your brain learns to pick out individual threads of sound. You can distinguish the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the palace kitchens, chopping blocks from the sharper, metallic clang of the armorer's workshop. You learn the sound of the wind whistling through the cypress trees in the outer gardens, a sound different from the wind in your own small courtyard. These sounds are your only real connection to the outside world, a form of auditory eavesdropping on a life you are no longer living. You start to spend hours with your ear pressed against a wall, a cool patch of marble in the hammam that seems to be a particularly good conductor of sound. It becomes a ritual. You close your eyes and you listen. Most of what you hear is noise, but sometimes you catch snippets of conversations, a fragment of a sentence, a burst of laughter, an angry shout. The words are indistinct, warped by their journey through stone and plaster. But they are undeniably human. They are gold. You hoard these fragments like a miser hoarding coins. You piece them together, trying to build a narrative. A servant complaining about the price of melons in the market. Two guards gossiping about their captain. A woman humming a lullaby to a child. These tiny, mundane glimpses of everyday life are both a comfort and a torture. They remind you that the world goes on, vibrant and full of trivial, wonderful concerns that are no longer yours. This desperate scrabbling for information was a key feature of a prince's life in the Kafes. With no official news, rumors became currency, and the princes became masters of intelligence gathering within their own limited means. They would learn to read the expressions on the faces of the few officials who were occasionally permitted to see them. They would analyze the quality of the food they were served. Was a finer cut of meat a sign of the sultan's favor, or a lesser one a sign of his displeasure? Every tiny detail was scrutinized for meaning. A particularly fascinating undebated aspect of this is the role of the palace physicians. The prince's health was a matter of state security. A physician would visit regularly, and this was one of the few opportunities a prince had to interact with someone from the outside who was not a deaf mute. Historians argue about whether these physicians acted as secret conduits of information. Could a doctor, while checking the pulse, discreetly whisper a piece of news, or was he, too, just another pair of eyes for the sultan? Assessing the prince's mental and physical decline, it's likely that both were true at different times, depending on the loyalties and bravery of the individual doctor. You, however, have no doctor's visits to look forward to yet. All you have are the walls. And the walls are beginning to talk back. The paranoia that has been slowly growing in the back of your mind starts to bloom. Are these sounds real, or is your mind, starved of input, starting to manufacture its own? You hear a whisper that sounds like your own name. Was it real or just a trick of the wind? You start to doubt your own senses. The silence was maddening. But this new world of phantom sounds is worse. It's a landscape of uncertainty, where you can't distinguish between reality and your own fracturing mind. You start to see patterns everywhere. The cracks in the ceiling tiles from a map of the Danube. The swirls in the marble floor look like a face in profile. This phenomenon, seeing patterns in random data, is called P or IA. It's a normal psychological tic. But for you, it becomes a mode of survival. You are so desperate for meaning that you wring it from meaningless things. It's a way to feel like you are still a thinking, interpreting being, not just a passive object. One evening, you hear something new. It's not a sound from the outside. It's a sound from inside the Kafes, from the suite of apartments next to yours, the one belonging to your younger brother. It's the sound of sobbing, a raw, uncontrolled, desperate sound. It's the first authentic, uncensored human emotion you have heard in what feels like a lifetime. You go to the wall that separates your apartments and you press your ear against it. You listen to your brother weep. You can't go to him. You can't speak to him. You can't offer a word of comfort. All you can do is stand there, in the darkness, and share his silent, solitary grief. The sound is horrifying, but it is also a strange relief. It's proof that you are not alone in your misery. It's proof that the silence and the isolation are getting to someone else. 2. You are not the only one breaking. The sound eventually fades, replaced once more by the usual quiet. But something has shifted. You used to listen to the walls to hear the outside world. Now you know that the most important stories, the ones that truly matter to you, are being whispered and wept right here, in the gilded cage you share. The enemy is not just the silence anymore. It's the walls themselves, and the secrets they keep. The man in the mirror is becoming a stranger. Each morning, when you look at your reflection in the polished silver mirror in your chamber, you feel a slight jolt of surprise. The face that stares back at you is yours, but it's changing in ways you don't recognize. The eyes seem wider, perpetually searching. There are new lines of tension around your mouth. Your skin, once sun-kissed from hours in the training yards, has taken on a pale, almost translucent quality, the skin of a creature that lives indoors. He is the only person you can talk to. And so, you do. The habit started as a whisper, a way to break the silence. Now, it has become a full-blown ritual. You have conversations with your reflection. You ask him questions. You tell him your fears. You share the fragmented bits of gossip you've gleaned from the walls. He at least always meets your gaze. He always listens. He is your confidant, your co-conspirator, your only friend. Did you hear the weeping last night? You asked the man in the mirror. His face, a perfect copy of your own, looks grim. He nods slowly. He is not as strong as we are. You continue. The we creating a fragile alliance against the world. The man in the mirror doesn't answer. Of course, but you imagine his reply. You script his side of the dialogue in your head. It's a pathetic pantomime of friendship, a one-man play performed in the lonely theater of your mind. But it's all you have. This kind of behavior is a classic symptom of extreme, prolonged social isolation. When deprived of external human interaction, the mind creates its own. It's a survival mechanism, an attempt to preserve the parts of the brain dedicated to social connection. For the princes of the Kafes, is often manifested as elaborate internal worlds, conversations with imaginary companions, or, as in your case, a deep and complex relationship with one's own reflection. It was a sign of sanity fighting a losing battle against the encroaching madness. You notice other changes in yourself. Your movements have become quieter, more solitude. You walk close to the walls. You pause at doorways. You listen. You are developing the habits of a prey animal. The open space of the courtyard, which once felt confining, now feels vast and exposed. You prefer the shadows, the enclosed spaces of your rooms. Your world is shrinking, not just physically, but psychologically. A strange and purely understood aspect of the Kafes experience was the Kafes syndrome or cage shock that afflicted princes who were eventually released. After decades of confinement in a small, quiet, predictable space, the outside world was an overwhelming sensory assault. The noise, the crowds, the open sky, it was all too much. Many former prisoners developed extreme agoraphobia, refusing to leave the palace, and sometimes even recreating their cell-like conditions within their new, grander quarters. They had been institutionalized to such a degree that they could no longer function outside the institution. You see the first signs of this in yourself. One of your deaf-mute servants accidentally drops a silver tray. The crash in the silent room is apocalyptic. It's so loud, so unexpected, that you cry out and throw yourself to the floor, covering your head with your hands. Your heart hammers against your ribs, and it takes you a full minute to realize you are not in any danger. The servant stands perfectly still, his face a blank mask, waiting for your panic to subside. You feel a hot flush of shame. You, a prince of the House of Ottoman, cowering on the floor because of a dropped plate. The man in the mirror looks at you with pity. The line between you and him, the man in the mirror, begins to blur. Sometimes, you are not sure who is the reflection and who is real. You are both trapped. You are both watching. You are both waiting. Your identity, once a solid and unquestionable thing, prince, son of the sultan, descendant of conquerors, is becoming fluid and uncertain. Who are you? If no one speaks your name, who are you? If you perform no actions in the world, you are just a consciousness trapped in a decaying body, watching a stranger's face in a silver frame. This loss of a stable sense of self is perhaps the most insidious cruelty of the Kafes. Historians can document the physical conditions, the political reasons, the ultimate outcomes, but they can only speculate on the internal experience, the slow, quiet erosion of a human soul. There are no diaries from the Kafes, no letters. The historical record is, like your servants, silent on the things that mattered most. We are left to guess at the terror of watching your own mind unravel, of feeling your personality fray and disintegrate day by day. Tonight, you stand before the mirror for a long time. The lanterns cast flickering shadows on your face, making it seem animated, alive. One day, you whisper to the man in the glass, "We will get out of here. One day, we will show them all." The man in the mirror says nothing. He just stares back, his eyes wide with a mixture of desperate hope and the chilling, vacant look of someone who has been alone for far, far too long. He looks. You realize with a sudden, cold clarity, a little bit mad, and since his face is your face, you know that you must look a little bit mad, too. The monotony is a slow poison, and the palace authorities, in their own strange way, seem to understand this. They know that a mind left completely to fester in boredom might snap in unpredictable ways, and so, occasionally, they provide a distraction, a carefully managed, highly theatrical event designed to break the routine and provide a semblance of normal life. They put on a play, and you are its sole audience. It happens without warning. One morning, you wake up to a different kind of activity in the courtyard. Not the usual silent, purposeful movements of your servants, but a controlled, quiet bustle. Workers are bringing imported flowers, hanging new silk banners from the walls, and laying out magnificent carpets over the stone paths. Your deaf-mute attendants dress you in a kaftan of shimmering brocade, a garment far too fine for an ordinary day of pacing and reading. You are not told what is happening, but you know this is a performance. Later in the day, you are escorted to a seat on a raised platform at one end of the courtyard. Your brothers are there too, seated on separate, smaller platforms. You are close enough to see each other, but too far to speak. You exchange wary, questioning glances. What is this for a troupe of musicians, acrobats, and poets is brought into the Kafes? They are not the usual palace entertainers. They are a special group, carefully vetted, who perform only for the caged princes. The show begins. The musicians play stirring anthems of Ottoman victory. The acrobats perform feats of impossible balance and strength. The poets recite epic verses praising the wisdom and generosity of the reigning sultan, your brother. It's a spectacular display, a feast for the senses. The colors are dazzling. The music is powerful. The performances are flawless. And it is all a lie. This is a piece of political theater, a psychological operation. The gown is to fall. First, it's a reminder of the power and glory of the empire that you are no longer a part of. It's meant to awe you, to reinforce the legitimacy of your brother's rule. Look at this magnificent world. The performance screams, it is thriving without you. Second, and more cynically, it's an act of hollow generosity. It's a way for the Sultan to feel benevolent, to believe he is caring for his imprisoned brothers. See, I give them entertainment. I see to their cultural enrichment. It's a performance for his own conscience as much as it is for you. You watch the show with a detached, clinical curiosity. You appreciate the skill of the performers, but you feel no emotion. The stirring music does not stir you. The poet's words of praise for your brother, the man who locked you in this cage, taste like ash in your mouth. You are not a participant, you are a specimen being observed. You know that somewhere, out of sight, officials are watching you, gauging your reactions. Do you look pleased? Do you look resentful? Do you look bored? Your response will be noted, reported, and analyzed. An obscure but fascinating detail about these performances is that they were often repeated, sometimes with years in between. A prince might see the exact same troupe, performing the exact same routine that he had seen a decade earlier. For the prince, this would be a surreal and deeply unsettling experience. The performers would have aged, but he would be in the exact same spot, wearing the same kind of clothes, watching the same show. It would be a stark, cruel measure of his own stagnant existence, a living diorama of his lost years. During a lull in the performance, your eyes meet those of one of the acrobats, a young woman poised on the shoulders of her partner. For a split second, her professional smile falters. You see something in her eyes. Petty fear, it's a flicker of genuine human connection, a crack in the perfect theatrical facade. She looks away quickly, her smile locking back into place. But the moment stays with you. It's a reminder that these performers are also, in a way, prisoners of this system, forced to participate in this strange, cruel charade. The performance ends. The entertainers bow deeply, not to you, but in the general direction of the main palace, towards the unseen sultan. They pack up their things and don't lead away. The workers come and remove the flowers and the banners. Within an hour, the courtyard is back to its normal, Spartan beauty. It is as if the whole thing never happened. You are back in your silent, timeless world. But the event has an effect. Just not the one the organizers intended. It doesn't make you feel grateful or awed. It makes you feel angry. The brief, artificial injection of life and color has only highlighted the gray emptiness of your daily reality. The taste of the world they allowed you has only made you more starved for it. The play has failed to pacify you. It has woken you up. Historians still debate the efficacy of this strategy. Did these carefully managed spectacles truly help to keep the princes docile, as intended, or did they, as in your case, only sharpen their sense of injustice and fuel their resentment? Turning a quiet despair into a simmering rage, the answer probably varied from prince to prince and from day to day. For you, tonight, the result is clear. You lie awake, the phantom music still ringing in your ears, and for the first time in a long time, you don't feel despair. You feel a cold, clarifying anger. The play was meant to soothe the beast in the cage. Instead, it has reminded him that he has claws. The anger you felt after the performance is a hot, sharp thing, but it has nowhere to go. It coalesces inside you, slowly transforming into something colder and more insidious paranoia. The world has already been taken from you now. You begin to fear that the architects of your confinement want to take your life as well, but in a quieter, more deniable way. Your fear coalesces around the most basic act of survival: eating. Every meal becomes a trial. The silver tray arrives, carried by a silent servant. On it sits a feast: roasted lamb, pilaf studded with pistachios, bowls of yogurt and honey, steaming bread. It looks beautiful, a testament to the palace kitchens. But all you see is a colorful array of potential poisons. You stare at the food, your mind racing. Is this the day they try to kill you? You start to develop rituals, desperate, irrational attempts to protect yourself. You will only eat from the underside of the bread loaf. You will only drink water that you have left standing for an hour. As if poison had a half-life you could outwait. You swap the food from your plate with the food on a serving dish, thinking the poisoner would target your specific portion. It's a chess game against a phantom opponent. A battle of wits fought entirely within your own skull. This fear of poisoning was not an irrational fantasy, it was a deeply ingrained reality of court life in many empires, and the Ottoman Palace was no exception. High-ranking officials, and especially the Sultan himself, employed food tasters for this very reason. But for a caged prince, there were no such protections. You were entirely at the mercy of the system that imprisoned you. A quiet death from a sudden illness would be a convenient way to remove a troublesome prince without the scandal of an execution. You begin to watch your servants with a new, terrifying intensity. Every gesture is suspect. Why did the giver of coffee use his left hand today instead of his right? Why did the arranger of cushions look at your food tray for a second too long? Their blank faces, which were once just maddening, are now sinister masks hiding murderous intent. You are living in a spy thriller of your own making, and you are the only actor who doesn't know the script. A strange and little-known countermeasure to this fear existed within the palace: the use of poison-detecting tableware. The Ottoman sultans, like many rulers of the era, sometimes used celadon porcelain from China. A persistent belief, or myth, held that this special ceramic would crack or change color if it came into contact with poison. While this had no scientific basis, the psychological comfort it provided was real. You, however, are not the Sultan. You have fine silver and ceramics. but no magical plates. You have only your wits, and they are becoming increasingly frayed. Your paranoia extends beyond poison. You become convinced that your conversations with the man in the mirror are being overheard. You start whispering to him, cupping your hand around your mouth, even when you are completely alone. You check the silken wall hangings for hidden listening holes. You lie on the floor and examine the cracks between the floorboards. You are turning your own beautiful cell into a high-security prison of your own design, searching for threats that may or may not exist. The mind, in a state of sensory deprivation and constant, no-grade fear, becomes a powerful engine of delusion. It seeks out threats to explain the ambient entirety. It's a way of making sense of a terrifyingly senseless situation for the princes. This often led to full-blown persecutory delusions, a belief that they were the targets of a vast, complex conspiracy. They were not entirely wrong, they were prisoners of a system, but their minds magnified the threat, twisting it into a constant, personal, and malevolent plot against their lives. One day, you decide you cannot take it anymore. You refuse to eat. The tray is brought, and you wave it away. You sit in your chair, arms crossed, a silent, defiant statue. The servant looks at you, his face impassive. He leaves the tray on a low table and retreats. There is purse. The food grows cold. The scent of it fills the room, a taunting reminder of your hunger. Your stomach growls in protest. This is a battle of wills. Can you starve yourself before they force you to eat? The keeper of the door, the lead eunuch, eventually enters your room. He is flanked by two larger servants. He knocks at you, then at the untouched tray. He makes no gesture, no sound. He simply stands there, his presence an overwhelming statement of authority. There is a silent, terrifying menace in his stillness. He is not asking you to eat, he is telling you that your defiance is futile. You are a child having a tantrum, and the adults are waiting for it to be over. The standoff lasts for what feels like an eternity. Your stomach aches. Your head feels light. Finally, your resolve crumbles. You are not a martyr. You are a hungry, terrified man. With a shaking hand, you reach for a piece of bread. You eat it slowly, your eyes locked on the eunuch. He watches you, his expression unchanging, until you have finished the slice. Then, with a slight, almost perceptible nod, he turns and leaves, the other servants following. You have lost. You have been reminded, in the cruelest and most intimate way, of your utter powerlessness. They control your life, and they will control your death too, if and when they choose. After they leave, you eat the rest of the meal ravenously, like a stray dog. And as you eat, you weep, not from sadness, but from a mixture of shame, rage, and the bone-deep, chilling fear that you are slowly but surely losing your mind. The poison isn't in the food, the poison is in the cage itself, and you have been drinking it every single day. The years fall away like dead leaves, unnoticed. You no longer try to count them. What is the point of measuring something you have in infinite? Useless supply. Your life is no longer a river flowing towards the sea, it is a stagnant pond. And the memories of the outside world are like pebbles dropped into it long ago. Their ripples long since faded. You try to remember your mother's face. You close your eyes and concentrate. But the image is blurry, like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. You can recall the feel of her hand, the scent of her perfume, but the specific lines of her smile. The exact shade of her eyes, they are gone. The faces of your childhood friends, your tutors, your father the Sultan, they have all dissolved into a gallery of ghosts, their features indistinct and interchangeable. Your memory, once a source of pride, is becoming a treacherous landscape. The things you learned from books, the dates of battles, the names of ancient kings remain sharp and clear. They are abstract facts, safely stored. But your personal, sensory memories are fading. What does a horse smell like? What is the feeling of running at full speed? What is the taste of sea salt on the wind? You know the words for these things. But the sensations themselves are becoming foreign. Intellectual concepts rather than lived experiences. This phenomenon, the fading of episodic memory due to a lack of new sensory input, is a known consequence of long-term isolation. The brain, like a muscle, needs exercise. The neural pathways that store memories of sights, sounds, and smells need to be reinforced by new experiences. Without them, they begin to decay. The princes in the Kafes were living through a slow, neurological erasure of their own pasts. They were becoming unwritten books. You cling to the few sensory memories you have left. The taste of the 7 different kinds of honey they serve you. The texture of the 12 different silks used for your kaftans. The specific notes in the sad songs your concubine plays on her oud. Your entire sensory world has shrunk to the size of a doll's house, and you obsess over its tiny details because it is all you have. A particularly poignant, and perhaps apocryphal, story told about the Kafes concerns a prince who had been imprisoned since infancy. When asked by a rare visitor what he thought the world outside was like, he supposedly described it as a series of larger and larger rooms, each one more beautifully decorated than the last. He had no concept of an open sky, of a horizon, of a world that was not defined by walls. His cage had become the literal blueprint for his entire cosmology. Whether true or not, it speaks to the profound psychological reshaping that occurred within those walls. Your sense of self continues to erode. You spend more and more time talking to the man in the mirror, but even he is starting to seem less real. The world of your books feels more solid and tangible than your own life. You are not the protagonist of your own story anymore. You are a reader, a spectator. You are a ghost haunting the opulent tomb of a prince who died a long time ago, the day he walks through that door. The outside world has become a myth. You hear fragments about it: wars in Persia, rebellions in the Balkans, the birth of new nieces and nephews, but it all sounds like a fairy tale. The names and places are familiar from your studies, but you cannot connect them to a living, breathing reality. Your brother, the Sultan, is no longer a person you once knew, a man of flesh and blood. He is a distant, abstract concept, a name attached to power, like Pharaoh or Caesar. Historians debate whether the princes were kept completely ignorant or were intentionally fed scraps of information. The consensus leans towards a controlled flow of information. It was useful for the Sultan to have his brothers know about his military victories or the stability of his reign, as it reinforced their own powerlessness. But news of defeats, famines, or internal dissent that would be carefully filtered out. The information they received was not news, it was propaganda, designed to manage their psychology. One day, a servant brings you a new book. It's a beautifully illustrated atlas, full of detailed maps of the world. You open it with trembling hands. You see the sprawling shape of your own empire, its borders stretching across 3 continents. You see the cities Damascus, Cairo, Belgrade. You trace the lines of the rivers, the coastlines, the mountain ranges, and you feel a profound and overwhelming sense of loss. This is your birthright. This world of vast distances and diverse peoples. You were raised to understand it, to one day help rule it. No, it is just a picture in a book. You are like a man dying of thirst while looking at a painting of a waterfall. The knowledge of the world, which you once saw as a tool, is now a source of exquisite torture. You have the map, but you are forbidden to travel the territory. You close the atlas. The memory of freedom is no longer a comfort. It's a wound, and you realize, with a chilling sense of resignation, that it might be better to forget. It might be less painful to let the memories of the world fade completely, to allow your mind to shrink to fit the dimensions of your cage. If you cannot remember what the sun feels like on your face, perhaps you will stop missing it. You look at your reflection in the polished cover of the atlas. The man staring back looks tired. He looks like he is ready to give up. The world is fading, and he is letting it go. In the vast, silent ocean of your confinement, An island suddenly appears. An event so rare, so unprecedented, that it feels like a tear in the fabric of reality. Your brother, the Sultan, has decided to visit you. The preparations begin a day in advance. Your apartments are cleaned with a frantic energy you have never seen before. New silks are hung, fresh flowers are brought in, and the air is thick with the scent of expensive incense. Your servants, usually so placid, move with a nervous, almost terrified haste. You are scrubbed, perfumed, and dressed in a kaftan of such dazzling white silk that it hurts your eyes. They are preparing a stage, and you are the main prop. You don't know what to feel. Fear, hope, anger, all these emotions turn within you, creating a nauseating cocktail of anxiety. Why now after all these years of silence? Why now is he coming to gloat to offer a pardon, or is this some final, theatrical prelude to your execution? Your mind, a well-oiled machine for generating worst-case scenarios, spins itself into a frenzy. The moment arrives. The heavy doors to the Kafes, the ones you have not seen open from the inside since your arrival, swing inwards. A procession of high-ranking officials and bodyguards enters, their faces grim and formal. They line the walls of the courtyard, creating a human corridor. And then he appears, walking through the door and into the sunlight of your cage. He has changed. The years have been kinder to him than they have been to you, but they have left their mark. He is heavier. His beard is streaked with grey, and his eyes carry the weary weight of empire. He is no longer the brother you remember, nor the abstract concept you've imagined. He is a middle-aged man, powerful and tired. He dismisses his entourage with a wave of his hand, leaving only you, him, and the silent, watchful keeper at the door in the courtyard. The silence that follows is more profound than any you have ever experienced. It is the silence between two worlds. Brother, he says. His voice is rougher than you remember. The word hangs in the air between you, heavy with all the years of unspoken history. You had forgotten its sound. You bow. The movement stiff and unfamiliar. My Sultan, you reply. Your own voice a dry rasp. You dare not call him brother back. The balance of power is the first and only rule of this encounter. Such a meeting was an exceptionally rare occurrence. A reigning sultan visiting the Kafes was a major political event, fraught with risk and symbolism. It was a demonstration of absolute power that he could enter the lion's den without fear. But it was also a moment of intense vulnerability. The two rivals for the throne, face to face. Historians who have studied these rare encounters describe them as meticulously choreographed events, where every word, every gesture, was laden with meaning unthreat. He walks around the courtyard, inspecting it like a landlord inspecting a property. He comments on the flowers, the cleanliness of the fountain. It's a surreal, horrifying normal conversation. He is trying to pretend this is a normal visit, a family reunion. This casual disregard for the reality of your situation is more insulting than any open hostility. You are well looked after. I trust, he says, not looking at you. It's not a question, it's a statement. Allah has been generous, through your mercy, my Sultan. You recite the formulaic, required response. Then he looks at you, truly looks at you, for the first time. His eyes sweep over your pale face, your trembling hands, your magnificent, absurdly clean clothes. What does he see? A brother, a threat, a ghost, a problem that has been successfully managed? You see a flicker of something in his eyes. Is it pity, guilt, or is it just the cold calculation of a man assessing a piece of state property? A little-known but powerful theory about these visits is that they often coincided with a crisis in the Sultan's own reign, a military defeat, a janissary uprising, or a failure of his own health. The visit served as a reminder, both to the prince and to the court, of the alternative. Things may be bad with me, the Sultan's presence says, but imagine the chaos if this broken creature were to take the throne. The visit was a tool to shore up his own flagging legitimacy by displaying the decay of his rivals. I have not forgotten you, he says, his voice softer now. I think of you. I pray for your peace. The words are a knife twisting in your gut. His prayers for your peace are the very reason you have no peace. His not forgetting you is the very essence of your prison. He takes a small, velvet pouch from his belt, a gift, he says, holding it out. You take it. Your fingers brush his for a fraction of a second. His hand is warm. Yours is cold. Inside the pouch is a single, perfect pearl, large and luminous. It is a gift of immense value and of immense cruelty. It is a reminder of the wealth of the world you cannot access. It is a payment for your life, for your sanity. The meeting is over. It has lasted no more than 10 minutes. He gives you a final, unreadable look, turns, and walks away. The officials form behind him. The great doors swing shut. The lock clicks into place. The island has sunk back into the sea. You are left standing in the courtyard, the pearl heady in your palm. The visit has given you no answers. It has offered no hope. It has only served to sharpen the edges of your reality, to remind you of the vast, unbridgeable chasm between his life and yours. He came not as a brother, but as a yoke-seeker, checking on an exotic, dangerous animal, and as you stand there under the small patch of sky, you clutch the pearl so tightly in your fist that you think your knuckles will crack. It is the loneliest, most valuable, and most worthless thing you have ever owned. The Sultan's visit, with its hollow gift and unspoken threats, acts as a catalyst. This slow, creeping madness that has been your quiet companion for years now begins to express itself in more concrete ways. The engine of your mind, deprived of any real-world problems to solve, starts to run on the fuel of its own bizarre logic. You begin to develop obsessions, strange and elaborate hobbies that consume your waking hours. This is the stage where the broken man begins to build his own stranger cage inside the gilded one. Your first obsession is with fabric. You have always been surrounded by the finest textiles, but now they become your entire world. You spend hours, days, just feeling the different textures of silk, velvet, brocade, and wool. You learn to distinguish between Damascene silk and Persian silk with your eyes closed. Just by the weight and feel of it, you commission, through your silent servants, new garments in specific, jarring color combinations, a kaftan of canary yellow with violet trim, trousers of emerald green worn with a crimson sash. Your wardrobe becomes a riot of clashing, vibrant colors, a visual scream against the tasteful, muted elegance of your prison. You begin to hoard things, not just fabrics, but everything. The silver spoons from your meals, the fallen petals from the courtyard flowers, the burnt-out wicks from the oil lamps. You arrange these objects in complex, geometric patterns on the floor of your chamber. These patterns have a deep, intricate meaning that is known only to you. Moving a single spoon or a dead petal would be, in your private cosmology, a catastrophic event. Your room, once a space of opulent emptiness, is now cluttered with the detritus of your obsession, a carefully curated landscape of junk. This hoarding and obsessive behavior is a well-documented psychological response to trauma and powerlessness. By controlling a small, definable part of their environment, individuals regain a sense of agency. For the caged princes, these obsessions were not just signs of madness, they were acts of creation. Unable to build an empire or a legacy in the real world, they built kingdoms of strange logic within their own minds. Their bizarre hobbies were the last, desperate attempts of a powerful intellect to do something, to impose order on chaos. One of the most famous examples of this, from actual Ottoman history, was Sultan Ibrahim I, who spent 22 years in the Kafes before ascending the throne. His time in confinement left him with a series of severe mental illnesses, including an obsession with amber, an obsession with large women, and a fixation on furs. He famously had entire rooms in the palace lined with expensive sable pelts and would conduct state business from a fur-covered throne, surrounded by his oversized concubines. These were not the whims of a decadent ruler, they were the deeply ingrained coping mechanisms of a broken man. now given the power to inflict his private madness on an entire empire. Your own madness takes a new turn. You become obsessed with scent. You command your servants to bring you dozens of different perfumes, spices, and incenses. You spend your days mixing them, creating new, often nauseating concoctions. You anoint your body, your clothes, and the walls of your room with these powerful smells. One day, you might smell of pure rosewater, the next of a pungent mix of cinnamon, cloves, and musk. The air in your apartments becomes thick and cloying, as sensory assault. It is your way of marking your territory, of overwriting the bland, pleasant smell of your prison with the chaotic signature of your own unraveling mind. These eccentricities serve a purpose. They fill the void. The endless, terrifying expanse of time is now structured by your obsessions. The day is no longer just a stretch of hours to be endured. It is a quest to find the perfect shade of blue silk, to complete a new pattern of spoons on the floor, or to create the ultimate perfume. Your madness is a form of self-employment. Historians still struggle to differentiate between genuine mental illness and calculated acts of feigned madness among the princes. It's plausible that some princes deliberately cultivated an appearance of insanity as a survival tactic. A mad prince was a non-threatening prince. A man obsessed with collecting feathers was unlikely to be seen as a credible rival for the throne. Feigning madness could have been the sanest thing a prince could do. Was your own descent into obsessive behavior a genuine collapse, or a cunning, subconscious act of self-preservation you yourself do not know? The line has become too blurred to see. One afternoon, the keeper of the door finds you in your chamber, curling on the floor, meticulously arranging a line of dried fig stems. You are so absorbed in your task that you do not notice him at first. You are humming a tuneless, repetitive melody to yourself. He stands in the doorway for a full minute, watching you. His face, as always, is a blank mask. But you feel his judgment, his silent documentation of your decay. You look up and see him. For a moment, you feel a hot flash of shame, but it passes quickly, replaced by a strange sense of defiance. You give him a wide, unnerving smile. You pick up another fig stem and place it carefully at the end of the line, as if it is the most important act in the world. You are the Mad Prince. This is your kingdom of junk. And in this kingdom, at least, you are the one who makes the rules. He watches you for another moment, then turns and glides away, leaving you to the magnificent, all-consuming logic of your own private world. It happens on a day like any other, a day defined by the familiar slant of the sun in the courtyard and the obsessive arrangement of your hoarded treasures. But something is different. The background hum of the palace, the faint, distant orchestra to which you have become so attuned, is playing a different tune. It's not one sound, but an absence of others. The rhythmic clang from the armory is silent. The usual shouts from the Janissary training grounds are missing. Even the ambient noise of servants and officials moving through the outer corridors has ceased. The silence that descends is not the engineered quiet of the Kafes. It's a tense, expectant hush, the kind of quiet that holds its breath. You are sitting on the floor, sorting pebbles by color. When you first notice it, you tilt your head, listening. The fountain in your courtyard suddenly sounds deafeningly loud against the new, profound stillness. Your heart, a slumbering animal, begins to stir. It beats a little faster. You have been in this cage for so long that your senses have become animalistic. You can smell a change in the weather, and the air today smells of ozone, of an approaching storm. Your deaf-mute servants are agitated. It's a subtle change, but after decades of studying them, you can read it clearly. Their movements, usually so fluid and economical, are now jerky and hesitant. They avoid your gaze even more than usual. They startle at small sounds. They know something. They always know everything first. They're silent. Shared knowledge is a wall you cannot penetrate, and it fills you with a frantic, helpless curiosity. This moment, the death of a sultan, was the most perilous and uncertain time in the empire. The transfer of power had to be managed with surgical precision. While the Sultan lay dying, a complex, secret dance would be taking place among the highest echelons of the court: the Grand Vizier, the Chief Black Eunuch, the head of the Janissaries. They would be deciding the succession, making alliances, and preparing to announce the new ruler. The entire palace would be in a state of lockdown, a communications blackout, to prevent the news from leaking and causing a panic or a preemptive coup. The silence you are hearing is the sound of the empire holding its breath. You abandon your pebbles. You begin to pace, a caged tiger that has scented blood. Your mind, which has been content to wander in its labyrinth of obsessions, is suddenly sharp, clear, and filled with a terrifying, exhilarating focus. Every possibility crashes through your thoughts at once. Is your brother, the Sultan, dead? Has there been a rebellion? And the most important, the most dangerous question of all: if he is dead, who will they choose to succeed him? You look out your latticed window, towards the apartments of your brothers. Are they feeling this too? Are they pacing their own rooms, their own minds racing with the same frantic calculations? The silent, resentful truce that has existed between you for decades is about to be broken. You are no longer fellow prisoners. You are rivals again. The game, after all these years, is back on. A strange and historically debated point is what the princes actually knew about the order of succession in this new era of the Kafes. Under the old system, the eldest or most powerful son usually took the throne, but with all the princes being equally inexperienced and isolated, the principle of seniority became the default. The throne would usually pass to the eldest surviving male of the dynasty. Do you know this? Has this new rule been explained to you? Or is it just a rumor you've gleaned from the whispering walls? Are you the eldest? You try to remember the ages of your brothers, a fact that has been utterly irrelevant for years, and is now the most important piece of information in the world. As dusk begins to fall, the tension becomes unbearable. The setting sun paints the sky a bloody orange red through the gaps in the rooftops. It feels like an omen. Then, you hear it, a new sound. The sound of heavy footsteps, not the usual soft slippers of your servants, but the tramp of military boots. And they are coming closer. They are coming from outside. They are coming for the Kafes. You freeze in the center of your room. This is it, the moment of truth. They are coming for one of you. But for what? To lead one of you to the throne, or to eliminate the rest of you? To clean the slate for a new sultan from a different branch of the family? The silk bowstring and the gilded throne have always been the two possible outcomes of your life, and you are about to discover which one it will be. The sound stops right outside the main door to your prison. You hear the loud, metallic scrape of the heavy bolt being drawn back, a sound you have not heard from this side of the wall in a lifetime. Your breath catches in your throat. You stand perfectly still, your hands clenched at your sides, every muscle in your body taut. The obsessions, the madness, the years of decay, they all fall away in this one crystalline moment of pure, undiluted terror and hope. The noise of the world stops. Then now, a new noise is about to begin. The door to the Kafes groans open. It's a sound of protest, the cry of a hinge that has been sealed by time undrossed. For a moment, all that fills the entryway is a blinding rectangle of light from the torches in the corridor outside. It's a harsh, aggressive light, so different from the soft, filtered sun of your courtyard. It stings your eyes, which have grown accustomed to the gentle gloom of your gilded cage. You shrink back from it, instinctively raising a hand to shield your face. Figures appear, silhouetted against the glare. They are not your familiar deaf-mute servants. These are men of power. You recognize the towering turban of the Grand Vizier, the severe robes of the Syatu al-Islam, the chief religious authority, and the grim, uniformed figures of the Aga of the Janissaries. They are the pillars of the empire, the kingmakers, and they have come to your tomb. They stride into the courtyard, their boots echoing on the stone. Their faces are a mixture of apprehension, urgency, and a kind of clinical curiosity as they look around at the place where the spare parts of the dynasty are stored. They look at you, their eyes taking in your pale face, your wild, unkempt hair, and your ridiculously fine clothes. You must look like a creature from a fairy tale, a man spun from moonlight and madness. You stand frozen, your mind a complete blank. The carefully rehearsed scenarios, the frantic calculations of the last few hours, they all evaporate in the face of this overwhelming reality. You are a thing to be acted upon, not an actor. The Grand Vizier steps forward. He is a man you have never seen before, but you know his office, his power. His face is impassive, but his eyes are sharp, assessing you like a merchant judging livestock. He clears his throat, and his voice, when it comes, is a formal, booming sound that seems to shake the very air of the courtyard. The Sultan, your brother, he begins, and then he pauses for a beat that stretches into eternity, has returned to the mercy of Allah. It's official, the world has changed. The sun has fallen from the sky. You feel a strange, hollow sensation in your chest. Not grief, it's been too long for grief. It's the feeling of a chain, one that has been wrapped around you your entire life, suddenly snapping. The Vizier continues, his words the hammer blows of fate, by the will of Allah, and by the consensus of the Divan, the sacred throne of the House of Osman passes to you. You are the eldest. It is your right. It is your duty. He makes a deep, solemn bow. May your reign be long and glorious, my Sultan. The other officials follow suit, bowing low. The Janissary Aga rests his hand on the hilt of his sword, a gesture of allegiance. My Sultan, the words hit you with a physical force. They are alien, impossible. You look down at your own hands, half expecting them to be different. You are. The Sultan, the man who talks to mirrors under ranges pebbles, the man who is afraid of his own food. It is the crudest, most terrifying joke you have ever heard. This transition was often as terrifying for the court as it was for the prince. The officials were essentially gambling. They were taking a man who had been deliberately broken by the state and placing him at the head of that state, praying that he was not too damaged to function. The first encounter between the new Sultan and his court was a moment of supreme tension, where the Vizieress would be desperately trying to assess the mental state of their new master. Was he lucid, paranoid, catatonic? The fate of the empire rested on the answer. You don't say anything. You can't. Your throat is closed. Your tongue a useless piece of wood in your mouth. You just stare, your eyes wide with a terror that they probably misinterpret as regal awe. The silence stretches. The Vizieress face tightens slightly. This is not going as smoothly as H.E.D. hoped. Suddenly, you are being mobbed, not by an angry crowd, but by a whirlwind of protocol. Servants, new servants, ones who speak rush in. They begin to strip off your fine, familiar prison clothes. You flinch at their touch. The contact from strangers in agony after years of isolation. They are dressing you in the imperial kaftan of state, a garment so heavy with gold thread and ceremony that it feels like it might crush you. Someone places the Sultan's turban on your head. It's heavy, and it slips sideways, and a nervous attendant has to straighten it. You are being dragged, not with force, but with an irresistible, urgent ceremony, out of the Kafes, out of the only home you have known for a lifetime. You cross the threshold, back into the torchlit corridor. The light is blinding, the air is cold, and the noise is a physical assault. The corridor is packed with people, all shouting, all trying to get a look at you, the ghost who has returned to life. A little known but poignant detail of this moment is what happened to the other princes. As you were led out to throne, guards would have been dispatched to the apartments of your brothers. They were now your prisoners, their fate now in your hands. The cycle would begin anew. The moment of your liberation was the moment of their damnation. Do you even have a chance to look back to see their faces at their own latticed windows, watching you go now? You are swept along by the tide of history. They are pulling you towards the light, towards the throne, towards a world you no longer understand. You feel a scream building in your chest, a scream of pure, Primal fear. You are a deep-sea fish that has been dragged to the surface, and the pressure change is killing you. They think they have freed a prince. They don't realize they have unleashed a madman. The journey from the Kafes to the throne room is a nightmarish blur. It's not a long walk in terms of distance, but it's a journey across dimensions. You are moving through a tunnel of noise, light, and bodies. The air, which for decades has been a controlled environment of soft perfumes, is now a thick soup of sweat, torch smoke, and the heavy scent of 1,000 anxious breaths. Your senses, honed to the delicate subtleties of silence, are being brutally assaulted. Faces swim in and out of your vision. Pale, bearded, turbaned faces, all looking at you with the same intense, hungry expression. They are the faces of your court, your government, your empire. To them, you are not a man, you are a symbol, the new center of the universe. To you, they are a terrifying, faceless mob. You want to shrink away, to retreat to the familiar shadows of your cell, but you are trapped in the current of the procession, swept along towards your own coronation. You are led into the imperial hall, the same hall where you last saw your brother on a throne and were sentenced to your living death. The room is ablaze with light from 100 candelabras. It's packed with the highest dignitaries of the empire. A sea of silk, velvet, and steel. The collective gaze of all these powerful men falls on you, and it feels like a physical weight. The ceremony itself is a chaotic, disorienting ritual. It's called the Palace, the accession, the Syhuleslam. The chief cleric recites prayers, his voice droning on in a language you barely recognize as your own. The Janissary officers come forward, one by one, to pledge their allegiance, kissing the hem of your ridiculously heavy new robe. You are a puppet in your own play, being moved and positioned by the people around you. You just stand there, rigid with terror, your eyes wide and unblinking. The climax of the ceremony is the act of girding. You are led to the sacred sword of your ancestor, Ottoman, the founder of your dynasty. This is the equivalent of a coronation. The sword is buckled to your waist. It is a real weapon, heavy and deadly. The feel of the cold steel against your hip is a shock. It is an instrument of power, of action, of a world you have only read about in books. You are now the supreme military commander of one of the world's most powerful armies. The thought is so absurd, so terrifyingly ludicrous, that a small, hysterical laugh bubbles up in your throat. You choke it down. This moment, the first appearance of the new sultan, was critical. The court would be scrutinizing your every move. A firm voice, a regal bearing, a confident gaze. These were the things they were desperate to see. They needed to believe that the man who emerged from the cage was still a sultan in spirit. Any sign of weakness, of the mental decay they all secretly suspected, could shatter their confidence and throw the government into chaos. Your vacant, terrified stare is not reassuring. After the ceremony, there is the tradition of the accession donative. A vast sum of money is distributed to the Janissaries to secure their loyalty to the new reign. The Grand Vizier leans in and whispers in your ear, explaining what is required. He needs your formal approval. He is asking for a decision. A real decision, with real consequences. It's the first one you've had to make in decades. The words won't come. You just nod. A jerky, puppet-like motion. The Vizier seems satisfied, or at least relieved. He hurries off to give the orders. You are finally guided to the throne. It's a massive, gilded structure, more a small building than a piece of furniture. You sit, and the brocaded cushions swallow you. From this elevated position, you look out over the sea of faces. They are all looking up at you, waiting for what a speech, a command, a sign of wisdom. You open your mouth, and a strained, croaking sound comes out. You try again. It is bright. You whisper. A nervous silence falls over the whole. The Grand Vizier, standing beside the throne, quickly steps in. His Majesty, the Sultan, is overwhelmed by the light of his loyal subjects' devotion. He proclaims, his voice booming with a confidence you desperately lack. The court murmurs in polite agreement, but you see the flicker of doubt in their eyes. They have seen the crack in the facade. Historians often speculate on the sheer shock experienced by these accidental sultans. Men like you were the unforeseen consequence of a well-intentioned reform. The Kafes system was designed to prevent civil wars by producing passive, unthreatening princes. The flaw in the logic, which became catastrophically apparent over time, was that it also produced passive, unthreatening, and profoundly damaged sultans. The system traded the short-term risk of fratricide for the long-term, slow-burning crisis of incompetent and unstable rule. The ceremony is over. You are now the Padishah, the shadow of God on earth, the ruler of a vast empire. But as you sit on the enormous, lonely throne, clutching its golden arms so hard your knuckles are white, you have never felt smaller or more powerless. You have been moved from one cage to another. This one is larger, more ornate, and infinitely more dangerous. The silent, predictable world of the Kafes has been shattered, replaced by a world of noise, light, and terrifying expectation. You are a prisoner who has been made the warden of his own, much larger, prison, and you have no idea what to do next. Freedom is not a release, it's an assault. The days following your accession are a continuous sensory onslaught that pushes your fragile mind to its breaking point. For decades, your world was a bubble of silence, muted colors, and predictable routines. No. That bubble has burst, and the unfiltered chaos of reality is rushing in. The sheer noise is the worst part. The Topkapi Palace, which you once knew as a place of quiet corridors and echoing fountains, is a hive of ceaseless activity. The shouting of couriers, the arguments of officials, the clatter of thousands of footsteps on marble, the distant roar of the city outside, it's a symphony of chaos, and your brain has no idea how to process it. You find yourself flinching at sudden sounds, covering your ears in the middle of important meeting. The world is simply too loud. Then there are the colors. In the Kafes, your palette was limited to the rich, but familiar tones of your chambers. Now, you are confronted with a dizzying kaleidoscope, the vibrant kaftans of your courtiers, the brilliant blues of the ethnic tiles in the public halls, the shocking green of the palace gardens stretching out before you. It's all too much, too bright. Your eyes, accustomed to gloom, ache from the visual overload. You find yourself squinting, looking at the floor, desperate for a patch of neutral, restful color. And the people, gods, the people, they are everywhere. An endless stream of faces, all wanting something from you. Viziers seeking your seal on decrees, generals wanting orders, ambassadors from foreign lands presenting their credentials, petitioners begging for justice. They talk to you, they look at you, they wait for your response. In the Kafes, the human face was a rare and silent thing. Now, it is a constant, demanding presence. You cannot read their expressions. You cannot follow their rapid-fire arguments. You cannot remember their names. They are a terrifying, undifferentiated mass of expectation. This cage shock, as we've called it, is a key to understanding the bizarre rule of many former Kafes inmates. Their first acts as sultan were often dictated not by policy or strategy, but by a desperate attempt to control their overwhelming new environment. They were not governing, they were copying. A famous example is Sultan Mustafa I, the first beneficiary and victim of the Kafes. When he was first brought to the throne, he was reportedly so disoriented and terrified that he tried to run back to the safety of his cage, shouting and throwing things at the officials who tried to stop him. You find yourself doing the same, though in a more subdued way. You retreat. You seek out small, quiet rooms in the vastness of the palace. You dismiss your attendants and lock the doors. You find yourself drawn to the familiar, to the things that remind you of your confinement. You order your meals to be served with the same silver you used in the Kafes. You request the same types of incense, the same silks for your bedding. You are trying to recreate your prison in the heart of your palace because the prison, for all its horrors, was at least predictable. It was safe. Your vizieresses are growing concerned. They need a functioning sultan, not a terrified recluse. They try to coax you out, to engage you in the business of state. They bring you documents to sign. You stare at the elegant, flowing script, the lines of black ink on white paper. In the Kafes, reading was your escape. Now, it is a demand. The words represent real things: taxes, armies, laws that will affect millions of people. The responsibility is a physical weight that makes it hard to breathe. You sign where they tell you to sign, your hand moving like a clumsy automaton. A little known but telling detail from this period of Ottoman history is the rise in power of the Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother, and the Grand Vizier. With a mentally incapacitated sultan on the throne, a power vacuum was created. This vacuum was often filled by the sultan's mother, who had her own political network within the harem, and the chief minister, who controlled the state bureaucracy. The empire was effectively run by a committee while the man on the throne was treated as a sacred, but ultimately powerless, figurehead. Your weakness is their opportunity. You experience this firsthand. Your mother, whom you have not seen since you were a boy, is now a constant presence. She is an older woman, her face a web of fine lines, but her eyes are as sharp and intelligent as ever. She speaks to you in soft, soothing tones, as if you were a frightened child. She brings you your favorite foods. She reassures you. She tells you not to worry. Leave the difficult matters to me, she says, patting your hand. You just need to rest and be strong. She is building a new, more comfortable cage around you, one made of maternal love and political ambition. One evening, you escape your handlers. You wander the palace corridors alone at night, a ghost in your own home. You find your way to a high balcony, one overlooking the Bosporus. You step out into the cool night air. Below you, the lights of the city glitter like a fallen constellation. The sea is a vast, dark expanse, and for the first time, you can smell the salt on the wind. It is beautiful. It is terrifying. It is too big. The sheer scale of the world, the endless, open space, fills you with a profound vertigo. You grip the railing, your body trembling, and you feel an overwhelming urge to retreat, to run back to a small, safe room with solid walls. The world is too loud, too bright, too big, and you, the master of it all, are too small for it. The initial shock of your release begins to subside, not into clarity, but into a new, stranger state of being. You are the Sultan, the absolute ruler. This fact, which was once a terrifying abstraction, is slowly becoming a reality, and the way you begin to exercise your newfound power is a direct reflection of the broken mind that wields it. Your rule is not one of strategy or policy, it is a reign of whims, dictated by the paranoid logic and bizarre obsessions you cultivated in the cage. Your first official decrees are baffling to your court. You issue a command that all the songbirds in the palace gardens must be replaced with birds of a specific, uniform color, a dull, unassuming brown. The vizieresses are perplexed. Is this an allegory, a secret political message? They debate its meaning for days. They don't understand that you are not making a statement, you are simply trying to reduce the visual noise of the gardens, to make the world less chaotically colorful. Next, you become obsessed with silence. The noise of the palace still grates on your nerves, so you ban all conversation in the main corridors. Officials are forced to communicate in whispers and hand gestures. You order the palace guards to wrap their boots in felt to muffle the sound of their patrols. You are not trying to be a tyrant, you are just trying to turn down the volume of the world to a level you can tolerate. You are trying to make the palace more like the Kafes. These bizarre and seemingly random decrees were a hallmark of the reigns of several mad sultans. Sultan Ibrahim, for example, once took a sudden liking to the story of a particular religious preacher and ordered all the other preachers in Istanbul to tell the exact same sermon, word for word. On another occasion, he flew into a rage and ordered his entire naval fleet to be sunk. only to be talked down by his frantic viziers. These were not calculated acts of governance, they were the impulsive, erratic decisions of a man whose connection to reality was tenuous at best. You begin to apply the logic of your prison to the governance of your empire. In the Kafes, you were under constant surveillance. You survived by assuming everyone was a spy. Now, as Sultan, you apply the same paranoia to your court. You trust no one. You see conspiracies everywhere. You dismiss loyal, long-serving officials for no reason other than you don't like the way they look at you. You promote a low-ranking kitchen servant to a position of power simply because he once brought you a fig that you enjoyed. Your decisions are not based on merit or experience, but on the fleeting whims of your damaged psyche. Your court learns to adapt to your madness. They become masters of interpreting your moods. They learn that logic and reason are useless. The only way to influence you is to appeal to your obsessions. Does the empire need a new trade agreement with Venice? The savvy ambassador doesn't present you with economic data. He brings you a gift of magnificent Venetian velvet. Knowing that you will be so absorbed by the fabric that you will sign any document he puts in front of you. The state is run not by debate, but by indulging the bizarre hobbies of its ruler. A fascinating underdog aspect of this period is how the system of corruption adapted and even thrived under an unstable ruler. With a predictable sultan, officials knew the rules. With a mad sultan, there were no rules, only whims. This created an environment where flattery, bribery, and the ability to cater to the sultan's latest obsession became the primary currencies of power. The government didn't collapse, it simply became more decadent and unpredictable. You find that you can only make decisions about things you understand, and the only things you truly understand are the tiny, obsessive details of your former life. You will spend hours debating the exact blend of incense to be used in the Blue Mosque, while a report about a famine in Anatolia lies in red on your table. You will design a new, ridiculously complex uniform for your personal bodyguards, while ignoring a plea for reinforcements from a general on the Hungarian frontier. You are a micromanager of the irrelevant, and completely paralyzed by the important. One day, your Grand Vizier comes to you with an urgent matter. A rebellion has broken out in a distant province. He lays out maps. He explains the strategic situation. He presents you with 3 possible courses of action. He is asking you for a command. He made a decision. You stare at the map, the names of the towns, the rivers, the mountains. They're just abstract symbols to you, like the patterns on your floor back in the cage. You cannot grasp the reality of it. A rebellion armies, it's a story from a book. You look up from the map and your eyes fix on a single, fascinating object, the inkwell on the vizier's portable writing desk. It's made of a single piece of carved jade. A beautiful, luminous green. You are captivated by it. That inkwell, you say, your voice full of wonder. It is exquisite. Where did you get it? The Grand Vizier freezes. He stares at you, his mouth slightly agape. He has been talking about war and treason, and you are admiring his inkwell. In that moment, he understands. The man on the throne is not truly there. He is still back in the cage, lost in a world of beautiful, meaningless things. And the empire, for better or worse, is on its own. Your paranoia, once a private torment, now becomes a true-love statecraft. You cannot trust the faces you see, the reports you are given, or the advice of your most senior counselors. In the Kafes, you survive by believing you were always being watched. No, as Sultan, you ensure that everyone is. You build a new cage, an invisible one made of fear and suspicion, and you place your entire court inside it. You begin to rely on a network of spies and informants. But these are not the sophisticated agents of a state intelligence apparatus. They are the people on the margins, the ones no one else pays attention to: the gardeners, the laundry maids, the stable boys. You remember from your confinement that the most important secrets are often hidden in the most mundane details. You reward these low-level informants slavishly for any scrap of gossip or rumor, no matter how trivial. Asia is seen speaking in hushed tones with a foreign ambassador, a general, who seems to be spending too much money. You obsess over these fragments, weaving them into vast, intricate tapestries of conspiracy in your mind. The palace, once a center of political debate and administration, becomes a nest of whispers. Officials become terrified to speak openly, knowing that any stray word could be carried back to you and misinterpreted by your paranoid logic. Meetings become exercises in empty formality, with no one willing to voice a real opinion for fear of it being seen as a challenge to your authority. You have successfully silenced your palace, just as you once craved silence in your cell. But this is the silence of fear, not of peace, and it is corrosive. This creation of a spy state built on paranoia was a recurring theme in the reigns of several sultans with Kafes backgrounds. It stemmed from a profound inability to engage in normal human relationships based on trust. Having spent their formative years in an environment where every human interaction was suspect, they were incapable of seeing their court as a body of advisors. They saw it as a collection of potential assassins and usurpers. Their governance was not about administration, it was about threat detection. You begin to trust only those who are as broken as you are. You remember the deaf-mute servants from your confinement, their loyalty absolute because their world was entirely dependent on you. You seek out similar figures for your inner circle. You find a disgraced astrologer who claims he can read the future and the stars, and you make him your most trusted political advisor. You elevate a court jester, a man whose cynical jokes seem to be the only honest thing you hear, to a position of immense influence. Your court becomes a bizarre menagerie of outcasts and misfits, the only people you believe are too powerless or too strange to betray you. A particularly dark and debated aspect of this paranoia was the summary execution. A sultan, in a fit of rage or suspicion, could order the death of anyone, even his grand vizier, with a single word. While this power had always existed, under a stable ruler it was used sparingly and with political calculation. Under a ruler like you, it becomes a terrifyingly random event. Historians still argue about how many of these executions were the result of genuine political threats versus the paranoid delusions of a mentally ill monarch. The truth, for the terrified officials of the time, was irrelevant. The axe could fall on anyone at any time. You begin to hold your audiences in strange, unsettling ways. Instead of sitting on the throne in the grand hall, you will summon a vizier to a small, dark storage room, forcing him to deliver his report while surrounded by dusty carpets. Or you will listen to an ambassador's speech from behind a screen, so he is talking to an unseen presence. These are not calculated power moves, they are the actions of a man suffering from severe social anxiety and agoraphobia. You are trying to manage your own terror by controlling the environment, but to your court, these actions are the terrifyingly unpredictable whims of a god-king. One night, you are unable to sleep. The face of a particular general, a man with a confident smile and direct eyes, haunts you. He is too confident, too sure of himself. In the logic of the Kafes, confidence equals ambition, and ambition equals treason. You summon the captain of your personal guard. When he arrives, you are standing in your chambers in your nightshirt, looking wild-eyed. The general, you whisper, your voice a dry hiss. He plots against me. The captain, a man who knows his survival depends on unquestioning obedience, simply asks, your command, my sultan. You look at him, and for a moment, the ghost of the man you once were, the boy who studied history and poetry, feels a flicker of horror. But the ghost is weak, and the paranoia is strong. The silk bowstring, you sigh. The words fall from your lips, easy and cold. The captain bows and retreats. It is done. You have just ordered the death of a powerful and possibly innocent man based on nothing more than a bad feeling. You feel a surge of something. It is not pleasure, not exactly. It is the grim, satisfying feeling of having eliminated a perceived threat. It is the feeling of a man in a dark room who has just swatted a buzzing mosquito. It is the only kind of peace your broken mind can understand. You have turned your empire into a cage, And you are its paranoid, lonely, all-powerful ghost. Your desire to control your environment, born in the claustrophobic confines of the Kafes, expands to encompass the entire Topkapi Palace. You are not content to simply rule from your chambers, you begin to physically reshape the palace itself, turning the heart of the empire into a sprawling, architectural manifestation of your own damaged psyche. Your reign is not just written in decrees, but in mortar and stone. It starts with the walls. You feel exposed, unsafe. The vast courtyards and open pavilions of the palace, designed to project an image of imperial confidence and power, feel threatening to you. You order new walls to be built, subdividing large spaces into smaller, more manageable enclosures. You seal off windows that have sweeping vistas of the city, replacing them with the familiar, comforting latticework screens of your old cell. You are building a labyrinth, a place of shadows and enclosed spaces where you can feel secure. Your viziers are aghast. You are spending a fortune from the treasury not on forts or mosques, but on these strange, seemingly pointless internal constructions. The palace, once a marvel of rational and beautiful design, is becoming a cluttered, confusing maze. Corridors led to dead ends. Once bright holes are plunged into perpetual twilight. You are, quite literally, building a larger Kafes for everyone. This impulse to reshape one's surroundings to match an internal state is a powerful one. For rulers who emerged from the Kafes, the palace was not a home or a seat of government, it was a source of anxiety. Their building projects often defied political or aesthetic logic and can only be understood as attempts to create a sense of psychological safety. Sultan Ibrahim, in his obsession with furs, didn't just wear them, he had entire rooms upholstered in them, creating soft, womb-like enclosures that presumably soothed his frayed nerves. Your obsession is with walls. You become fixated on doors. You order new, heavier doors for every room, fitted with complex locks and bolts that can only be opened from the inside. You carry a large, jangling ring of keys with you at all times, the only person with the power to navigate the maze you have built. The palace, once an open hub of imperial life, now becomes a series of locked boxes, each one a cell in your grand design. Your court is forced to adapt. Officials learn to navigate the confusing new layout. Ambassadors get lost on their way to audiences. The daily life of the palace, once a smooth and efficient routine, becomes a frustrating exercise in navigating your architectural whims. The physical structure of the government is being altered to fit the blueprint of your paranoia. A little known but revealing detail about the architecture of the Topkapi Palace is its already labyrinthine and cellular design. A collection of courtyards and pavilions rather than a single monolithic building. This was a reflection of Ottoman ideas about privacy and hierarchy. You are simply taking this existing principle and pushing it to its pathological extreme, turning a system of ordered privacy into a fortress of paranoid isolation. Your ultimate project is the construction of a new, personal kiosk, a small pleasure palace, deep within the most secluded part of the grounds. It is to be your sanctuary, your ultimate retreat. You obsess over its design. It must have no large windows. Its rooms must be small and dimly lit. It must be surrounded by a high wall, and its only entrance must be a single, easily defensible gate. It is, in essence, a replica of the Kafes, but this time, you are the one who holds the key. You spend hours with the imperial architects, poring over the plans. They, seasoned professionals, are baffled by your requests. They suggest elegant arches, grand domes, and light-filled halls. You reject them all. You want no ceilings, thick walls, and narrow corridors. You are not designing a palace, you are designing a high-end bunker. Historians who study the architectural records of this period often find themselves playing psychoanalyst, trying to understand the bizarre choices made by sultans like you. Was the proliferation of small, isolated kiosks a sign of a renewed interest in nature and private life? As some argue, or was it, as seems more likely in your case, a symptom of profound agoraphobia and a desperate need for defensible, controllable spaces. The buildings themselves are the most durable evidence of the psychological impact of the Kafes system. The day your new kiosk is completed, you walk through it alone. It is perfect. It is dark, quiet, and secure. The rooms are small and comforting. The filtered light from the lattice screens casts familiar patterns on the floor. It feels like home. It feels like the prison you miss. You sit in the main chamber, a room with no windows at all, lit only by a few oil lamps. You feel a sense of peace you haven't felt since the day they dragged you out of the Kafes. You have finally succeeded. You have escaped the terrifying freedom of the world. You have built a cage fit for a sultan, locked the door from the inside, and thrown away the key. Outside, the empire churns on without you, its ministers struggling to govern from within the maze you've built, while you sit in the comfortable, self-imposed darkness, the undisputed king of your own small, silent world. The empire is a vast and powerful machine, designed to run even with a ghost at the controls. For a time, it does. Your Grand Vizier, a man of immense skill and patience, manages the day-to-day affairs of state. Your mother, the Validi Sultan, expertly navigates the treacherous politics of the harem, maintaining stability through her own network of influence. The armies fight on the frontiers, the tax collectors gather revenue, and the great ship of the Ottoman state sails on, despite the fact that its captain is locked in his cabin, talking to the walls. But a system cannot endure a vacuum at its center forever. Your unpredictability, your paranoia, and your complete withdrawal from the responsibilities of rule begin to cause cracks in the foundations of the empire. The machine starts to sputter. The first to notice are the foreign ambassadors. They report back to their home courts that the mighty Ottoman Sultan is a recluse, a madman, who is more interested in the color of his cushions than in matters of war and peace. This perception of weakness is dangerous. It invites aggression. A neighboring power, seeing an opportunity, might decide that now is the perfect time to reclaim a disputed border territory. The aura of invincibility that surrounded the empire begins to fade. Next, the army grows restless. The Janissaries, the elite heart of the Ottoman military, have a long history of intervening in politics when they perceive weakness on the throne. Their loyalty is to the institution of the Sultanate, not necessarily to the man who currently occupies it. They hear the stories trickling out of the palace of your strange decrees, your seclusion, your fits of paranoia. They begin to grumble. A weak sultan endangers the empire, and it endangers them. Their murmurs of discontent grow louder. The ruling elite, the very men who placed you on the throne, are now trapped in a prison of their own making. They put you in power to ensure stability, to avoid a succession crisis. But they have exchanged the risk of a short, bloody civil war for the slow, creeping rot of incompetent rule. They are now faced with a terrible dilemma. To depose a sultan is a shocking, revolutionary act, a violation of the sacred order. But to leave you on the throne is to risk the future of the empire itself. This is the fatal flaw of the Kafes system. Laid bare, it was a perfect short-term solution that created an unsolvable long-term problem. By prioritizing the physical survival of the princes over their mental and political development, the system created a production line of dysfunctional rulers. It solved the problem of princely rebellions, but it institutionalized mediocrity and madness at the very top of the government. Historians almost universally agree that while the Kafes may have prevented some civil wars, its long-term effect was to precipitate the slow decline of the Ottoman dynasty's quality of leadership, a decline from which it never fully recovered. The crisis comes to a head. A military defeat on the frontier, caused by a lack of clear orders from the palace, galvanizes your opponents. The Grand Vizier, the Hsyul Islam, and the Aga of the Janissaries hold a secret meeting. They have come to a grim conclusion. The experiment has failed. The broken man they took from the cage cannot be fixed. For the good of the state, the same merciless logic that once condemned you to the Kafes you must be removed. The debate among them, as reconstructed by historians, would have been fraught with peril, who had the authority to depose the shadow of God on earth. The Scyhul Islam would have to issue a fatwa, a legal opinion, justifying the act on the grounds of your madness and inability to rule. The Janissaries would have to provide the muscle, a deeply risky move that could split the army. The Grand Vizier would have to manage the political fallout. It is a coup, couched in the language of legal and religious necessity. They have also made another decision. Who will replace you? The choice is obvious. They will go back to the source. They will go back to the Kafes. There is another prince waiting there, perhaps one of your younger brothers, or a cousin. A man who is, they hope, less damaged than you are. They are ready to roll the dice again, to pull another name from the lottery of madmen, praying for a different outcome. The system is designed to perpetuate itself, even at the cost of its own children. You know nothing of this. You are in your dark, silent chaos, happily absorbed in your latest obsession, the intricate patterns of a moth's wing. You have achieved a kind of peace, the peace of complete detachment. You do not hear the rising tide of discontent outside your walls. You do not hear the sound of the machine grinding to a halt. You do not hear the footsteps of the men who are coming to take your throne away, the same men who once gave it to you. You have finally built a cage so perfect that you cannot even hear the approach of your own doom. The end comes for you not with a bang, but with a quiet, familiar click, the sound of a lock being turned from the outside. You are in your kiosk, your sanctuary. When they arrive, this time, there is no ceremony, no deference. The men who enter your dark room are not here to crown you, they are here to collect you. The Grand Vizier, his face a grim mask of resolve, reads from a scroll. It is the fatwa from the Scyhul Islam, a formal, legal document declaring you unfit to rule on account of your imbalance of mind. The words are a clinical, passional indictment of your entire existence. The document that makes you sultan was a lie, but this one, the one that unmakes you, is the truest thing anyone has said to you in years. You do not resist. You do not shout. The part of you that understands what is happening is too small and too tired to fight. The part of you that is maddened, broken, simply watches the scene with a detached curiosity, as if it were a play. They take the heavy, jeweled turban from your head, the ceremonial sword from your side. The weight lifted from your body is immense. It is a relief. They lead you out your private kiosk, through the confusing maze of corridors you yourself design, and they take you back to the Sinsir Lik, back to the Kafes. The journey is the reverse of the one you took what feels like a lifetime ago. You are moving from noise to silence, from light to shadow, from a world of terrifying complexity to one of simple, predictable confinement. You are going home. As you stand once more in the familiar courtyard, another procession passes you, going in the opposite direction. It is your successor, your younger brother, perhaps, or a cousin you barely remember. His face is pale with the same mixture of terror and disbelief that you once wore. He is being led towards the throne, towards the light. You look at him, this ghost from your past, this ghost of your future self. You are two ends of a cycle, two men passing on a revolving door of fate. Does he look at you? Does he see in your vacant eyes a vision of his own possible future? The heavy door to the Kafes closes behind you. The look, which has been silent for the duration of your reign, groans back into place. You are back in your old rooms. They are exactly as you left them, preserved in time. The same silks, the same cushions, the same latticed windows. Your silent, deaf-mute servants reappear, their faces as impassive as ever, as if you had only been gone for an hour. The strange, undebated, historical question is what happened to deposed sultans. Were they executed or were they simply returned to the cage they came from? In most cases, the latter was true. To kill a former sultan was still considered a taboo, and a dangerous precedent. It was far easier, and in a way more cruel, to simply put the broken toy back in its box. You are now a historical curiosity, a man who has been both a prisoner and a king. only to become a prisoner again. You lie down on your old divan. The silence you craved, the silence you tried to impose on an entire palace, is here. It wraps around you like a familiar blanket, but it's different now. Before, it was the silence of waiting, the silence of a future that might one day happen. Now, it is the silence of the end. There is nothing left to wait for. You think about your reign, that brief, chaotic, dreamlike period of your life. Did it really happen? Were you really the Sultan? It feels like a story you read in a book, about a foolish, mad king. You feel no regret, no anger. You just feel a profound, bottomless exhaustion. You close your eyes, in the darkness behind your eyelids. You are no longer a prince, no longer a sultan, no longer a prisoner. You are just a man, lying in a quiet room. You think about the cage. Was it the suite of rooms? Was it the palace? Was it the empire itself? Or was it always inside you? A prison of bone and mind that you carried with you wherever you went. Historians will debate the legacy of your reign, the madness of the Kafes system, the turning point in the empire's long decline. But for you, the debate is over. You have finally found a place where the world is not too loud, where the lights are not too bright, where no one expects anything of you. You lie on your bed, in your beautiful, silent cell, and for the first time in your life, you feel the faint, stirring promise of something that has eluded you through all your trials. The promise of peace. You are back in the cage, but for the first time, you feel you might actually be free. And so, the story ends, or rather, your story dissolves back into the quiet stream of time. The cycle you were a part of would continue for generations. A strange, sad engine at the heart of a great empire, producing rulers who are often more ghost than man. The gilded cage you knew would hold others, each with their own tales of madness and despair, their whispers absorbed by the silent, listening walls. But let that fade away now. The heavy palace doors, the glint of torches on steel, the weight of a silk robe, let it all become soft and distant. Like a dream you are already starting to forget. The echoes of history are growing faint, replaced by a much gentler sound. Perhaps it's the soft hum of the fan in your own room, or the quiet murmur of the city settling down for the night outside your window. The weight of the crown is gone. The fear is gone. There is only the stillness of this moment. Here in the quiet dark, you can feel the gentle pull of sleep. A soft tide drawing you out into a common silent sea. There are no more choices to be made, no more dangers to guard against. There is only the simple, peaceful rhythm of your own breathing, in doubt. A slow, easy cadence that carries you further and further away from the waking world, into a place of rest. The end of the article. Good night.